as far as the boundary changes, it not go all the way up to Bethany Bend. Because right now we have it from Bethany Bend all the way down to Mayfield on 9. So we're going to go prepared to reject that suggestion.
Can we take it off on the other end?
Yeah.
Well, no, because that's where we match with Alpharetta.
Where do you want to, they propose it, Morris?
I don't know where they wanted to stop.
We'll find out next
Yeah, we'll
week.
find
I
out.
really want it to go
You're
up
gonna
to
take
Bethany
your comp
Bend.
plan with you, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
So I'm so glad you mentioned that. So we'll carry our evidence. He said it was too long, and I said, you mean we're not going to meet up with Alpharetta's LCI? He said, no, the other side. I was like, what?
How strange.
So yeah.
And there's not a really good stopping place before them either, so
Yeah.
we're really going to push for that.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Otherwise, we'll take McFarland.
No, because they tell me all the way to the county line.
Right, which is what we want, but they
Right.
they had a 4-mile limit, which took us. Yeah, but I've
that's
seen
how we
them
got
do
to
longer
Bethany.
though.
What's the
So-
distance from Mayfield to the county line?
Oh, I don't know.
It's another,
Yeah.
almost twice, I imagine.
Let's see, because the old one.
Almost twice what we asked for, so it's probably, it's probably. No?
Okay. Well, I think it's like,
I would
it's
guess like
3.1
6 miles.
mile from Wynwood to the county line.
It can't be 3 miles from
It's
Woodward to
not from
Mayfield.
3 miles.
No.
No, that might be another
So it was
mile.
Mile and a quarter.
right. So we sort of took it away from the county line and then put it into Alpharetta. So
But it's our
That's what we're
grant.
looking at.
right,
Not Alpharetta's grant.
which
Yeah, but that Alpharetta being on the grant helped us get the grant.
Yeah, that's all.
I don't remember
So
that.
is that over now? Is that-
Next thing you're gonna do is tell me all my numbers on number of empty spaces you're gonna have to change.
Yeah. It's still a lot.
It's still a lot. You're right, Paul.
Do you have any update on when we're gonna hear about the comp plan?
yes, let me write that down.
That's not an update.
I'd like to mention. And
Oh, okay.
So the thing that he mentioned might be a possible discussion point was they didn't want it to be a linear corridor project, more of an activity center to include Webb Road, which we did, but not both sides, and some of Wynwood. So I don't know what they're thinking of, but they want to call it an activity center.
Well, Windward's up right. If we could trade off Mayfield for
Right,
starting
so-
at the city line and going, that would be good.
Alpharetta wasn't real keen on changing a lot of Wynwood, though.
Right.
Well, they don't change, just include it so we can get.
yeah.
No, but
Right.
Dennis would think that's a good idea to include
Yeah.
on the
Sure
other
you
side.
would.
of
Yep.
Wynwood.
They get the library then.
So we'll see. So those were the 2 points I was able to get out of him. And so we'll know more at our meeting next Tuesday.
When do you think you're gonna kick that off?
Depends on what they say, how much
Yeah,
they
depends on
change,
Yeah.
how much we can convince them to keep,
Because
then we can write the scope.
we finalize what we need to do, the scope will be written and be out in the next 2 weeks after we get finalized. So then we'll have, I don't know, a week or two to review. Because
She's running out of time.
there's only 2 LCIs that was awarded. And I've gotten so many calls from consultants
Oh,
saying,
sure.
"Oh, congratulations!"
Sure. Yeah.
So we'll probably have a stack to review.
That's all right.
So, okay, so on the comp plan, I called on there as well, and if I could remember what he said correctly, it was, yes, we are on track to give you a response on March 22nd. So you should be getting your, what is it, approval letters
He
shortly?
said approval.
Yeah,
That's a week of Tuesday.
right, right, so,
Good.
yeah, so hopefully.
So we don't know if the approval letter includes any other caveats, but,
Understand.
that's positive.
Better than rejection letter.
Yeah, you
Right, that's not what he said approval.
That-
right?
Your rework.
Yeah.
To that point, what's in the legislation that's saying that comp plans are going out the window and you don't even need them anymore? Where's
The
that all
latest
coming
thing
from?
that has passed out of the Senate, out of the state Senate, is not totally getting rid of the whole comp plan thing, but instead of, because what they did originally was pull out QLG entirely. So there was no definition, therefore there was no requirement for qualified local government, which is what really required the comp plans before. Okay, so they've kind of backed down. The latest thing is they've introduced a substitute bill that instead of pulling it out entirely, it leaves QLG in for those folks who have a comp plan. They should follow, you know, the DCA guidelines, but there's not a certification by DCA according to that substitute bill. So I don't know if they're just trying to give us half of what we need, half of what we want. I think they're leaving it in there so that they can use it for grants. You know, you can still get extra points, for instance, if you're a QLG, but you don't have to be a QLG. I think that's kind of where they're going with it. The other stuff about DRIs, they've watered down quite a bit too. But I think they're still leaving DRIs based
There it
on
is.
that substitute bill that I saw just today, in fact.
Okay.
And
I
so
couldn't
we'll
believe that.
see what happens.
I
Yeah, it's,
mean, it just, the way you read it, you know, I'm thinking, you spent
How much money?
all at once.
Yeah.
Oh, hey,
yeah.
don't even worry
Well,
about it.
I think they were trying to get the attention of DCA, and
Well,
they
they got
got
my
their
attention.
You ought to
attention.
keep
So.
QLGs and get rid of DCA.
Well, I think they were trying to get the attention of DCA, and so now they've gotten it.
Okay.
So we'll see what happens.
Now we can start the meeting. The Curtis is here.
There you go.
All in order.
I'm sorry I'm late.
That's okay. We were talking housekeeping stuff.
We were telling Curtis.
Okay, let's call the meeting to order at 7:15 on the 9th of March. We only have 2 items to talk about.
Only.
Yeah.
How do you want to go about this?
Let's start with the big. Just go through it. If you guys have comments, start with the big ones. Yeah, there should. Yeah. There's copies. Yeah, I think you should have that. Yeah, if you guys can sign in, so I can just have an idea who's here. So basically, I took this is the Highway State Route 9 Overlay District section and tried to implement what the bullet points were from the overlay, the Design Guidelines Committee outcome, and try to implement them into the ordinance. So any suggestions, thoughts, corrections, whatever, I'm totally fine with that. If I kind of miss something totally, please correct me.
I have a couple of questions.
Sure.
Just clarification on a couple of things. On page 4,
Okay.
item F, where it says accessory site features are prohibited in the front yard or any yard adjacent to a street. Why is that a prohibition? I'm assuming accessory feature would be things like a fountain, or if somebody wanted to be a statue, or what you call it,
Right.
gazebo, or
Well, I think that's from the original, and so I'm not sure what, other than, I would think it would be a negative accessory site feature, because it talks about things on roofs should be screened, I mean, things that you wouldn't want, so,
I think it would take a definition of accessory site feature or
Right.
something to be able to do it, because I had that same comment. It's,
Okay.
You know, we talk about trying to get amenities
but that's exactly that, yeah.
into
Yeah.
the
Talking about
projects, and then you
storage
can't put them in the
and-
front yard.
yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, what if somebody wanted to put a horse?
Yeah.
You know, big bronze horse.
okay.
And for example, in Crabapple, isn't there a accessory feature in front of, what's his name's place?
The Indian?
Yeah, yeah. I couldn't remember what it was. I knew there was
Heart.
something. Yeah.
So, I mean, I think the intent probably was for negative things that you wouldn't want, but you're right, that's something that we can
And by
beef up
stating in
and
here that you
change.
can't do it, nobody's gonna then design things in. Where if we wrote it where it could say accessory features, with, approval could be done, rather than just saying they're completely prohibited.
Right.
We defined accessory site.
That, I just didn't know if there was I don't think there is a
What does that
definition
mean?
of it.
Well,
Or we could just say accessory site features not to include amenities. And those amenities, I think, are defined in there, under amenity areas, or at least they're referenced.
yeah, there's no definition for that.
Let's go back to A under screening and fencing, because it says, the last sentence says, side parking on a corner lot facing a side street does not need to be screened.
It is?
Okay.
What?
Accessory site features.
Oh, I must have missed it.
Mechanical, electrical, lines, other equipment, cooling towers, mechanical penthouses, heating, air conditioning, units, and pads, exterior ladders, storage tanks, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Oh, right
So
here.
maybe there needs to be a definition of site amenities or something like that that would allow for those other features.
This is more utility,
such as
mechanical
fountain,
type of
sanctuary,
feature.
whatever. with approval.
Yeah.
Well, earlier in the ordinance, we've got amenity areas, and examples include but are not limited to public parks, plazas, public art, walking, recreational trails. That leaves it a little bit more open to interpretation as to what's an amenity, so if we wanted to fountain or something else, we probably could lump that in without anybody really fussing.
All right. I'm okay as long as it's been contemplated.
Can we, if it's all right with everybody, can we kind of go through from the beginning? Instead of jumping around. I know that this is consistent with the other overlays, but it bothers me in section B that we refer to this as part of a strategy, and yet I don't know where that strategy is. Does anybody else?
Okay, I didn't really mess with what was
No,
already
I-
there.
I know you didn't.
Okay,
But it's open for.
Okay,
edit,
it is,
right?
it is. Okay, I just didn't,
That's the purpose of this.
okay.
So, again, I mean, it says the same thing in the other overlays.
Right.
But that just concerns me, because where is the strategy that this is part of?
I think it's just generally referencing our
Or desire.
growth plan, or, yeah.
So can we
And
just,
more of a
why
desire.
isn't it just as effective to say it's adopted to promote the health, safety, and forget this strategy, this,
Yep.
That's fine.
Because this comes up.
Would it not umbrella up into the comprehensive plan? If it's not the comprehensive plan, then it's not part of anything that, then there isn't one.
that's a good point. If we wanted to make reference to the comprehensive plan, at least I'd feel better about it.
Well, I'm just saying, that's the only thing it could be, that we could be referring to as an umbrella overarching structure. Are your shirts identical?
We called each other this morning.
We forgot to send you that email.
He had his
Sorry.
sweater
Best
up.
time.
He
I
had it
know,
on.
really.
He took it off when he walked in.
We forgot to send you that email.
Y'all are in blue.
I think it's kind of creepy.
We're good brothers separated at birth.
Yeah, you're damned
In a
to
few
be there.
years.
Okay, so we're gonna take as part of strategy out.
What do you think about Chris is comment about?
Well, I don't think the plan is really a strategy. I mean, you could call it that. It's so, but that's the only thing it could be referring to, right? Loosely rolling up to that, and you could declare that to be a strategy.
Or, to your point, strike the word strategy and just have it roll up to the comprehensive plan, and it doesn't necessarily have to be considered a strategy, but it's got this umbrella.
But then you gotta take adopted out. I mean, it wasn't adopted as part of anything. It was adopted back when this thing was put in place to try and put a different, more stringent set of restrictions on the way that Highway 9 was gonna be developed, right? But there wasn't any strategy. I mean, it wasn't part of some larger whole. It was done, I mean, same words are in the Northwest overlay. And I don't remember there ever be any strategy discussed.
Well, it was a strategy to begin to start to define bulk, size, and all the other within the Northwest overlay at that point in time. So that was a strategy at that point, but it's just
The real strategy
It's
was to find
continued.
something that could be better control what Fulton County is willing to do, or allow, right?
Right.
And I don't want to make a big deal out of it, it just struck me as something that was a very weak reference. If somebody wanted to know what the strategy was, I don't know that we could articulate it. I don't care either way.
He's got text, Jim.
Say, just, so this division is adopted to promote.
To promote,
Yeah, okay.
In section E, Robin, State Route 9 should have overlay in there between the State Route 9 overlay district. And the next section, section A, don't we have a more current map than September 2003 for the Highway 9? Or is that still the map we're working off of?
We can reference a new map, that's fine. I mean, it's basically the same map, but,
Well,
we can
it can't
create.
be, because the Highway 9 overlay district in 2003 couldn't have included the area south of
That's true.
Highway 9.
Although then it says, it also applies to those properties annexed into the
But
city.
that really ought to go away. right?
That's
So we
true.
gotta put in
Okay, we
current-
can put it
in
in
the
current
current
map.
map and
Reference.
take the last sentence out.
Yeah, we can reference, in fact, the
have a
new
new
zoning
zoning
map
map.
as soon as they get that adopted. We can just make the same dated reference, and then
January
we'll be good, because they'll show
11.
all the overlay districts.
Yeah, because that's a part of the zoning map, so. Okay, so we'll change the date to,
I didn't see, oh, here, got it.
so,
Yeah.
it'll be
Yeah.
2011. Okay. Yeah, I did. Okay.
Your reference to the reserved sections needs to stop at 1086.
Okay, that's what's already there, but they'll redo that in the, we pay them enough money, they should. Yeah. Figuring that out. And I just kept on going, because I didn't know how many reserve sections I was gonna use, so I just,
Terry, does the section on the design review board square with the current role of the DRB? Has the role of the DRB's changed since this was written?
Yes.
It does?
Yes, it does.
yeah, I think we amended it to be consistent.
Okay.
Although, I think there's a recommendation's been made to take demolitions.
We'd love that, we would
Yeah.
love that, but,
And, well, and put them, to the historic preservation, because that was really, and, unless it's, that was the whole reason it came to the DRB originally, was because there were demolitions that were taking place and nobody was reviewing the demolitions
Yeah,
from a community standpoint.
what do you think?
But now that there's a historic preservation, it could just as easily slide over there, probably in a better location.
We'll see as in like this time
So what if-
around,
what
or?
if the demolition
In the
is
future.
something that has any historic value?
Well, it's, right away, staff says yea or nay, and then we go with that direction. But right now, all of them come through the DRB, and it doesn't,
10-year-old house.
it's a house that's derelict that was built in the 60s. It doesn't need to go to the DRB, it should be a staff decision to
Yeah.
take it out.
Although soon,
And there are a couple of, there are a few times when we do that, if there's a health or safety issue. It's pretty obvious we'll do it.
Okay.
I don't want to put John on the spot, but in 1087, what's the logic behind having a 3 times setback on the larger versus the smaller? What's the reason for that?
I'm not sure I can answer that.
This is consistent with what you guys had talked about in
Yeah,
the committee.
right,
I
right.
didn't understand why there was such a huge difference between the two.
Yeah, it's a maximum setback for those big box, basically. We're looking at bigger boxes. So that way they can have some parking in front. but they're still a heck of a lot closer than they normally would be.
Yeah, but 50,000 is a pretty damn big box to begin with. That's what I'm saying. I mean, you're saying if it's 49.5, the maximum is 100, and if it's 50,500, it can be 200 feet further back. I mean, I know you got to draw the line somewhere. And I wasn't arguing about the 50,000. It just seems the difference between 100 and 300 seems just a huge difference.
That was a
So how many-
recommendation from the
Yeah, that came
consultant,
from-
so.
Right. I'm trying to remember how many more rows. Terry, can you think of that off the top of your head? How many more rows of parking that might get in?
Well, I mean, realistically, a rule of thumb, when we're designing something like that, you can fit the amount of parking you need totally in front of the building in 300 feet.
Okay.
So
So really,
that
we're not
doesn't,
having a
that
whole lot
doesn't,
of effect.
yeah, that doesn't have that much of effect on a big box user. Because you can,
Yeah, that
you
was
got
just-
30 cars in a row, 25 cars in a row times the width of the building.
Okay,
You
so-
pretty much get all the parking in front of a building over 50,000 square feet.
So help me reconcile that. When I go to the parking, the first thing on the list says on-site parking shall be located at the side and rear when possible. A maximum of 30% of the overall parking requirement may be placed in front of a building.
Now, I put that 30% in only because I didn't want, so it kind of forced them to put some in the back, even if it was a big,
No, but that's my point. I mean,
Right.
Yeah, to Terry's point, if you've got a big box
right.
and 300 feet gives you the ability to put everything in front and we got a 30% restriction, then why don't we leave it at 100 feet because you don't need more than that?
Yeah, it ought to be less than the 300, I think.
Well, we can change it, that was just their suggestion, so
I don't
that's,
have any, I don't have
I
any
mean, from the
data
design
that say it should be
standard.
changed. It just
Well,
felt to me
Terry's
like it was a
saying
big
that
number,
there's-
that's all.
from his experience, that
How far, what's the setback on Target? I mean, that's probably 300
Huge.
feet, right?
I don't know what the setback is.
Probably more.
It's probably
Right, yeah, it's
450 feet or so,
it's
at least.
huge.
It's big.
But they've got a lot of retaining wall and stuff too.
Yeah.
So keep-
And that's in front. Now, Kohl's, of course, it's
That was the
exempt from
idea,
that, so
yeah.
it's- right?
Right, but of course, their front doesn't face
Exactly, that's what it says, so they're exempt from.
But all of their parking is within a 300-foot field, if you look over the famous footwear.
Going
where the
that
sun-
way.
Right,
Where
right.
the sun tans, or whatever the name of it, I can't remember what it is. Pardon?
No, the sun,
No, the
sun tanning
sun
place, it
tanning
kind of
place.
sits in the middle
Sits in
right
the middle.
before.
So, typically, within that 300 feet, you could get pretty much all of the parking that would be required, especially, because those were parked at 5 per thousand, and this has got parking now at 4 per thousand as well, too. So you'd pretty easily fit the required parking.
It's just those
Within that
folks who want to
300
do
feet.
more than the
Yeah,
minimum parking
yeah.
that's gonna throw it a little
I mean, I
bit.
guess if I think about Target and maybe compare it to Fry's, Fry's is right out on the road. Do we want it there? Do we want it pushed back? And then maybe Target's too far, but do we want it pushed back? Which aesthetically is the more pleasing way to do it. We could do the parking as a different issue.
I think part of it was the thoughts were among the committee that buildings over 50,000 square feet actually wanted to have them
Further back.
further
Further
back.
back, right.
Okay.
So that would take the Kohl's and the Fry's and put them further back on a site. But then the way the thought was there'd be buildings in the foreground to those.
But this doesn't necessarily put them back. It just allows them to go back.
Allows them to go back, yeah, maximum, which they will. For the most part.
Coles wouldn't, because we tried to get them to do that, and they wouldn't do anything different than what they did. We tried to get them to turn the thing
Turn it
90
around.
degrees, so to face Highway 9, and they wouldn't even think, they were gonna walk away from it.
Well, and that's probably because of the parking field and how it was
They said
positioned.
they couldn't reconfigure the shape. of
It
the
wasn't
building.
too deep, it wasn't deep enough
The-
for them to put it in
Yeah,
the
the
back.
problem was they were coming in in a second phase of the project, which would have put them way forward of the rest of
Yeah,
the center.
yeah.
That was the big challenge there.
Well, Terry, what's your experience when you've got a big box coming in? Aren't they?
They're going to want to try to get as much of the parking in front of their building as they
Exactly
can.
what I was expecting you to say. Because they're going to want to push as deep in the property as possible to accommodate 100% of the parking being in front of the
Right.
building.
Now, this requirement where there's a maximum of the percentage of the parking that would be in front, would allow them to move forward on the site. Then in that case, they would probably want to move forward, because they'd be closer to the street.
Which would you rather have, though? I mean, if you were to take Target and turn it around, so that the front faced inward instead of outward, and the aesthetic, requirements would still support the back of the building. I guess my struggle with this is it doesn't help me think about where the building's actually going to end up. It gives them a zone of 300 feet, and they can put it anywhere in there that they want. And it doesn't matter whether it's the front, the back, or the side, because we aren't defining it that way.
Well, I think the overlay states that it should front on a road, the front door. So it is setting up the orientation of the building.
So trying to get a picture in my
Or a
mind
courtyard.
of how this definition would affect assembler, for example. So if we're saying, if I just take A on page 11, and it says on-site parking shall be located to the side and rear of the building when possible. So we're obviously encouraging them to not have it be in the front. And a maximum of 30% of the overall parking requirement for development may be placed in front of the building. So you couldn't do similar like it is then going
Right.
forward.
Right.
That's
So they
what
could
we're-
have done
That may should be changed to
Yeah.
a shall
Yeah.
Yeah.
in that instance. You
Yeah.
want it to be prescriptive rather than optional.
You couldn't do our Publix in Birmingham either.
Wouldn't you drop the when possible?
Publix in Birmingham has parking on two
Yeah,
sides.
no one parks on the other side, but
Which is the front?
Yeah.
It has a corner entry, so
Yeah.
So they're both considered sides?
both considered fronts,
So
probably.
So they have no parking on side or back then?
They have, well,
For which one?
Yeah, the public is back.
yeah, the back side is
Yeah.
all the way
Is all,
against the rear property line.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
they
my
probably
point.
have two
They
fronts.
They wouldn't meet this either.
Yeah.
Technically, they would be two fronts, yeah.
I mean, I guess it's a hard balance. I mean, obviously, there's gonna be site considerate, every site is different depending on the size and shape. And maybe why I didn't put everything super shall whatever is because and I guess I don't know, that balance is that we would highly encourage that the parking be on the side and the rear when possible, but at the same time, we understand if it's a certain size site, it could be almost impossible to do that. So I don't know, other than them.
well, I like the fact that by writing it this way, it then really sort of determines that they are going to have to come forward for consideration. They're going to have to request a variance to change their parking.
Well,
And it does allow you the chance to do a site-specific measure,
Either
which
that or
is a
they're
good
gonna,
thing.
or they're gonna put it all the way up right on the street.
Well, but if our architectural requirements are strong enough, and
Yeah, I don't think
they're
that's
they're
a
not
bad
bad
thing.
right
Yeah.
now, that's not necessarily a bad thing. So if we have a 360,
I'm not arguing, I agree with you.
Well,
That's why I'm struggling with the 300 foot,
yeah,
because to me, on a box that size, this is gonna restrict them from being able to do most of that 300 feet.
No, that's a maximum, not a minimum.
I know, but if Terry's right, and 300 feet basically would accommodate all their parking, then what are they gonna do with 300 feet if they only can put 30% of the parking in the front?
They'll move the building up.
Right, so they don't need 300 feet.
And that's what we're saying, is we don't have to be stuck to the 300
Right,
feet. I
right.
mean, especially
Well,
now that if everybody agrees to reduce the parking for retail, then, like Terry said, that's
Why are
gonna.
we so insistent that it face sideways versus on the front road?
What do you mean?
We're not.
sideways? We're not.
But if we're saying we want the front or the parking to be
The side
on
or the
the
rear.
side of the rear, then aren't we saying that the front of the building is gonna be turned? It's not gonna be on, like Highway 9?
Well, the entrance
In
probably.
other words, like
Well,
Coles.
Well, the front
We
yard.
wanted it to be
Face Highway 9.
face Highway 9.
And that's what this ordinance says, is that the entrance is to face the public street.
that's not to say they couldn't have another entrance on the other side,
Okay. But the parking's gotta be
but they probably wouldn't since they probably have storage.
on the side. Okay. Yeah.
registers.
But the front yard is defined
Security.
by the location of the street. I mean, that's how you determine the front yard, according to the definition of front setback, so.
And I mean, they're like, a typical Kohl's has multiple entrances. It doesn't even,
I just
you know,
thought we
that
were
one
trying to
happens just to have the
encourage more
front, but
holes,
the
and
one,
that's not what we want.
Where does it say that they are gonna face the street?
Right. Well, I got the definition for front yard. So it's the yard abutting any street except a side street on a corner lot. Front yards extend the entire length of an abutting street. This really isn't dependent on where the front door is.
Right,
But it's,
well-
dependent on where the abutting street is. So it's, front yards extend the entire length of an abutting street from intersecting lot line to intersecting lot line. Front yard of corner lot shall be applied to the street which abuts the lot for the shortest distance. So,
It's under 64-1095. And it's
Did you say
B.
1095?
Yeah, 1095, and then B, and then D, what's the number? A, B, C, D.
right.
All buildings
Page
shall be
8.
oriented to face a street or courtyard.
So you don't have to face a street. You could have, if the building's created a courtyard, then,
Then you could have an entrance off of a courtyard.
which I'm not so sure how much we've actually enforced. I mean,
We've tried in several cases to do
I
it.
would,
right.
I would certainly encourage us to get that B back over into 1087 or on building placement. It doesn't belong on building materials and architectural treatments.
We can do that. I mean,
Yeah.
Yeah, because otherwise,
so we can make,
We didn't
kind
have
of
it.
see.
Yeah, building placement didn't exist before, so
Right.
it shouldn't really pull over there.
Okay. Yeah, that's a good call.
I don't know. I
Just-
was just moving to page two.
That's right.
Declaring victory, page 2.
Manual spelled wrong in the first, in letter A. Wrong.
Yeah, no, we've got several little spelling.
I'm sorry, letter A, which is page?
Page 2, top of the page, the manual.
Oh,
This
okay.
is the.
Manuel, yeah.
Again, just trying to understand from the committee, the amenity area is supposed to be provided for a development that has over 75,000 square feet gross building area. It doesn't talk at all about the size of the amenity area or
Right,
anything
we
like that.
left it open,
Okay.
yeah. That number, you know, that was just, I don't think that there was any turning
wasn't
point to that
scientific.
number. It wasn't scientific, it was,
Okay.
you know, so if anybody has an idea for a different
Part
number.
of it was we looked at, you know, in order to get to a 75,000 square foot building, you've got to have a certain size piece of property to be able to do that, which is going to be, you know, probably in a 7.5, 8 acre range.
Sure.
Which could support then some amenities. So that was what was kind of driving that number more so than anything else.
Is it feasible, if it were a 75,000 square foot building to have an amenity area as opposed to a 75,000 square foot development?
Yeah,
Yeah, I think it's just, and that's why I think we left it open as far as the size minimum. We didn't put a minimum or maximum size on the amenity. I think even if it meant to be a couple of benches and,
No, I just meant
Yeah.
if it was a single large box building that was 75,000 square feet, somehow that doesn't seem to lend itself to an amenity area versus 10,000 square foot buildings.
well, you could have
Well,
an
it's a gross
amenity
number,
area,
so,
not unlike, I guess, you know, it's kind of a bad description of it, but Costco, when you're first going into
Right.
Costco,
They're little,
their little statue
yeah.
thing on the corner at the entry
Okay.
has some amenity to it.
Okay.
Didn't need to have it, but
Okay.
it's there. It's
And same
not a
thing
very
with
good
that.
not a very good
I
application.
wouldn't put any of those into. the
I'm
public
saying,
public
I was trying to think of something that was fairly
Well,
close.
it's
that
public
someone could-
art,
Play
yeah.
area when you're going in next to that
Yeah.
120,000 square foot
Yeah.
brick building.
I haven't noticed that. I see the BMW. I don't see the.
Yeah, that's an amenity area for some people.
Well, then it's kind of funny because
Residents
that
of both.
Old Milton and Haynes Bridge, where that huge jewelry store is,
Oh,
with
yeah.
all that
Yeah.
stuff. I mean, I don't know how many
Nice
tens of
neon
thousands of
signs
dollars
outside.
they're spending on that
Yes.
corner, and who's going to do anything? It's like, what's the purpose
I
of
think they're
it?
gonna start pumping
the-
water out of the well.
The brick color isn't consistent with the building behind it. It's just
It's just to do
Abomination
it.
of
What?
Well,
The
they have
purpose.
said that certain corners, all
Right.
corners are going to have amenities. And it started out when Eckerd built,
Right.
and they put that little
clock tower.
The
that little
tower, yeah.
thing up, whatever it was, and then
Walgreens.
well, no,
Yeah,
there's one.
Catty
The
corner.
first one was
Yeah,
Catty
you're
Corner,
right.
yeah.
Oh, you're right.
Yeah.
And then
Well, there's
Walgreens
one in
came
front of
in.
Walmart.
Yeah, and then the fountain at the other building. and
Right, so
Dixie
there's-
Diner, if it ever happens, there'll be something on that
Right.
corner.
Yeah.
So.
Well, that jeweler killed the building with his own sign.
Oh,
You don't like that sound?
Yeah.
It's purple.
I like the way the windows on the sides are at one elevation, but you come to the other side, and they're all just.
I think you did design
Terry,
that building, Terry.
I don't want to get too far down in the weeds in your business,
sorry.
but the trash receptacles, I would say take out the with side openings and have them limited to top openings only.
Well, it's very, the reason why it's about a $500 or $600 difference. So,
I mean, to have a side opening
Yes.
is cheaper.
no, it's
No,
more
it's more
expensive.
That's what I'm saying, so take it
Just
out.
take it out entirely?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, every one of those I've ever seen, particularly in an area where there's a lot of kids, this stuff's spilling out all over the ground.
I would just take out with or without side opening. I just would say
That's fine, leave it
black.
in black.
Well, as a retailer, when someone starts dictating that it will be a Victor Stanley Classic, and I know we say, or as approved by the City of Milton Design Review Board, I wish to hell I was selling those,
They're very expensive.
because,
Yeah, you
I
got
mean,
captive of it.
you know, it's.
Well, there are a lot of
I'm gonna yield
knockoffs
with
of
my
that.
national sales manager down here and say, oh, how would you like it that you walked in and said, no, I got the same thing, but I can save you nope, it's gotta be a Victor Stanley Classic. Nine words.
Yeah, there are some knockoffs that are
Yeah.
of that.
As long as it's
So
approved, we're
yeah.
good.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry to make a big deal
But
out
at
of
least it gives a starting point of what we
it. A
want.
design,
Yes.
okay.
So.
I missed the first time.
That salesman got paid extra bucks for
so-
being able to show that piece of paper.
No, I was gonna
Look
go
all
get
that.
on their sales. Gonna try to hire on to sell.
Especially all those benches Milton's been buying, right?
Page 3.
So there doesn't look like we've done anything with this.
Just a question in
Sure.
1090C. You're talking about the approval for something other than a 3-inch caliber hardwood shade tree. Do we want Lynn to be approving that versus the arborist?
We can change this.
It doesn't matter to me, yeah.
That was just,
I don't approve anything, he doesn't approve anyway.
right.
Do we have, in fact, a document called acceptable evergreen plan material for City of Milton and disturbed buffers?
Yeah.
We've got a list,
Well,
I don't know
we have a
if it's
list.
called that, we'll double check the,
Double check that.
title. Cause our list is in there.
I didn't make a brand or not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Has to be.
Cause we recently changed it, so we may have changed that title.
Under screening and fencing, A,
Yeah, you do the same thing I do.
it says that side parking on a corner lot facing a side street does not need to be screened,
Why?
and it really should.
Yeah. Why are we excluding that?
Because then we go down, and further down somewhere, and we talk about screening parking on road frontages.
Okay, we can get rid of it. That's fine. I got rid of berm because, and that was just my own unilateral decision, because from what I understand, nobody wants berms anymore. So, for screening. So I'm just gonna make sure I didn't
Do we have any idea
play.
what MTW's tire place gonna look like there?
Yeah.
NTV, yeah. Mm-hmm. There's
Is it gonna-
they've got a plan in.
Okay.
Where's it going to?
Right in front of
Next to
the,
Aldi and all.
on the
Yeah.
web, the long wall be on.
Just don't sit out on the patio, let Bobby G's. All night long, you're gonna hear.
I know, I was thinking of
You're gonna think you're in a NASCAR event or something.
It's now.
I had the same thought.
I wanted them to flip the building.
Are the doors facing
Yeah, we
the street
Facing
highway
web,
light,
but-
or are they,
Yeah.
Now they're facing Bobby G's.
the doors are facing highway?
Yeah, that's what I couldn't understand.
Yeah.
Why, what was their thought of not having it?
Well, the next thing they're gonna be like Andretti's, they're gonna wanna put a
Racetrack
track
in.
out in the parking lot. Yeah.
You know, that is number, no pun intended, number 9 tire location between McFarland Road and Bun.
Tire capital of the
And as
world.
of last week, it's one behind the liquor stores as of March. Will be one behind.
And only 2 behind the pain and rehab.
No, you beat me to it.
Now, did you count the two new liquor?
Yes, I did,
Okay.
yeah. There's only 8.
There's 33
Well,
feet.
now, wait a minute, the one behind,
that's
one by
fine.
Cactus Car Wash is gonna be a karate studio.
It
Yes,
already is.
Taekwondo.
Yeah.
that's
No,
right.
it is. Taekwondo bigger than life.
My wife, she said, well, why don't you just go to liquor
On
store?
C.
I said, hell, it's been closed for 3 years.
All right.
On C,
Sorry.
on C, I think we need to set the height requirements for the planting
Okay.
at planting and at maturity. Otherwise, they might just say, well, I gave you Liriope and just landscaping.
Okay, so at maturity, after height.
Yeah.
Is Larry Opie evergreen?
Well, see, this is saying that what this is saying is any retaining wall over 3 feet in height, you need to have landscape screening. But we don't specify what the landscape screening should be. So you could put a row of Liriope and accomplish what,
See, that's the difference between being from Georgia and not. Everybody that's not from Georgia calls that Moriarty.
Larry Opie, yeah. It's Florida.
I've learned it many different ways. I'm doing it the southern vernacular.
What's the rest of the name, the street name that starts with the word Ponce?
Oh, Ponce de Leon instead of.
Ponce de Leon?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
When we
Or
moved-
what's
when we moved
Layfette?
When we moved to, yeah, I know.
Depends
Well,
if
what's
you're
HOUST
North
or
Georgia.
Huh? What's Curtis?
How you pronounce that depends on if you're North Georgia or Louisiana.
That's right.
Well, how about HOUSTON?
Hushton.
Yeah.
No, it's Houston.
Houston.
That's right.
Here.
Hushton,
When we-
yeah,
when we
you live
moved
there.
to- When we moved to Brunswick, the main, or to St. Simons, the main street in Brunswick is GLOUCESTER.
Oh,
How do you pronounce that?
Gloucester.
Yeah, not Gloucester, but that's how it is down there.
We got
Gloucester.
Cairo in South Georgia and North Florida, Cairo and Havana, how they pronounce it. I kid you not, Havana, Havana.
Oh,
And
And
in
Cairo
Indiana,
is
and in Indiana, it's
CAIRO.
DeKalb Company, not
It
DeKalb.
is in Illinois too,
Yeah,
that's where I
yeah.
grew up.
Right.
DeKalb corn.
DeKalb corn. DeKalb.
Anyway,
Sorry.
Jerry, you wanted to do
Yeah, that's good.
Under C, we ought to have something, and I think there
Do
is.
we want to
some.
say at maturity? I mean, 3 feet.
yeah.
Well, I don't.
You know how it
There's something else that says something
Well,
like
if
3
we're-
feet at planting and
Yeah,
minimum of
plants-
4 feet at maturity.
Well, but it may not need to be 3 feet. It may be 2 feet at planting. But we're only talking about any wall over.
But don't
3
This is
you need
not
wall-
wall.
wall
But it could be
height?
it could be a wall that's 45 feet tall.
Yeah.
It's any wall that's over 3 feet. You're required to do the screening.
Well, how about wall height or 3 feet, whichever's less?
Well,
Well,
that's
yeah,
a
but
lot to ask for
that's-
wall height.
Yeah, if
No, I said whichever's less. Wall height or 3 feet at planting, whichever's less. So you
Well,
got
the
a
3
10-foot
feet
wall.
is the wall.
Well, you may want a higher plant than 3 feet on a
I'm
40-foot
just
high
saying a
wall.
planting.
Oh, at planting, yeah.
What I'm trying to avoid is somebody putting in a 1 gallon thing in the ground that 5 years later will start to cover the wall.
Yeah, that way, the way you just said it makes sense.
Okay.
Let's go to Mark and ask him what's
Yeah, ask Mark what to do on
viable
that.
on
But I
that.
think we do need to
I saw where it was.
specify
We do say-
something.
We do say somewhere in here that, there's one of them that said something about a minimum of 3 feet
That's on the
Yeah.
screening of parking.
at planting
At
and not
8
less than
feet
4
deep
feet at
and-
maturity and
yeah.
8 feet
Yeah.
apart or 8 feet.
Yeah, that's just above
that's
it.
in here
It
somewhere.
says screen shall be 3 feet in height at planting and 4 feet minimum at maturity.
There you go.
Yeah, right above it.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I think we just should do something there for the retaining wall.
Terry and D, does refuse receptacle include the thing that Fred doesn't like? The Victor Stanley?
That's not the intention. The intention
Oh,
is to
no.
dump it.
Maybe you ought to say dumpster there, just to be.
You don't
You know,
enclose it on 3 sides.
Actually, I hadn't thought about this until just now. Do we cite anything, we were very specific about it being 3-sided and X, Y, Z, and the 4th side being the gate that's actually opening and closing.
Mm-hmm.
Are we are saying it has to be self-closing gate with non-combustible materials, but do we define any further about it having to be architecturally consistent with the site or with the building?
I think
It's under building
yeah, I thought
materials.
I think we have always said it needs to be consistent with the primary building, but
If we do say that, great.
We could say under D, wall materials to be non-combustible brick or stone compatible with the,
might be in.
Architecturally compatible.
with the building, yeah. I don't care if it's a self-closing gate.
They don't
It has a
put
better
little
chance
hanging
of
out
being
thing.
closed first.
Yeah.
Hanging it
I don't know,
everywhere.
if you go based on the gates in our neighborhood, it's got a better chance of being broken.
Just by the thieves. Thieves.
Well, with the gas station, they'd have to keep it closed, otherwise.
Maybe it's in the other ones.
Drive in.
We'll just maybe just add it right there. Like
Yeah,
George said,
we'll
just
add
have
it.
it say that are architecturally compatible with, with the primary building.
We're making them do it. It's in there.
Well, okay, I found it. Exterior finishes for accessories
Where?
on page 10 on the top. Oh, crap, let's try.
Here it is, yeah, consistent.
Exterior finishes for accessory structures shall be consistent with the principal structure. So it's not just a enclosed trash, but anything
As
that
long as
might.
it's inclusive.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah, I knew we enforced it, but
Do we want to be consistent, Robin, and take berm out of E?
sure. So we got our accessory site features issue dealt with, right?
Terry, one thing I got confused about going through here, or John, if you can remember, but we're talking about where HVAC units and so on are supposed to go. We don't want them to be roof mounted, it says, at some point in here.
We would want them to be screened. I don't think we could
We
ever
don't want
exclude
them to be
it.
visible.
We don't want to be
Invisible.
Well, but I thought it said something about not wanting to be roof mounted either. Maybe I misread it.
I think there was that one.
I guess my question is, where do we want them if we have our druthers? Where do we want that stuff?
Personally, I'd want them on the roof.
Yep.
Well, I better find the thing that I read
It
that.
says accessory site features on a roof shall be screened from the view of public and private streets by parapet or other architectural feature. No parapet shall be required to be greater than 4 feet above the roof.
Yeah.
So it
I
assumes
question
it's some
that.
on the
G,
roof.
right,
Under G.
I don't know what else you'd be hiding.
Most rooftop units are taller than 4 feet. So I don't think we should have that limit in there of 4 feet for a parapet.
Right, that's where they got in trouble with the
Okay.
data center, right?
Yeah,
Yeah. So just take that out.
I'd take that out.
The whole sentence?
And last sentence, no parapets
Yeah,
are
right.
required to be
Yeah.
greater than 4 feet.
Take out the restriction that they're limited to 4 feet.
Yeah, here's where I saw it, it was in the Deerfield. It says roof-mounted mechanical equipment, vents, and stacks should be minimized and where possible eliminated.
In Deerfields.
Right.
That's from the
Yeah.
Deerfield one, yeah.
Yeah, it's a different subset of,
No, I understand, but I mean, that was my question. If you don't put them there, where do you want them? And we're saying here, we don't want them on the ground. Put 'em
Deerfield
somewhere.
wants them on the ground.
Yeah, they probably want them in a, like,
where,
area.
what that's aimed at really is for, these office buildings that, it's not a rooftop system as such, it's a whole different
It's
mechanical
almost a
system.
physical plant.
Yeah.
Well, let me ask the question now. I know Adam's not here, but the way this is written, we're adopting Deerfield. And all we're saying is if there's any conflict between the two, that Deerfield would control. What I thought I heard at the meeting we had, the one meeting we had, was that was because we believed that Deerfield was more restrictive.
No, it's actually less restrictive.
So, well, that was my impression
In a
from
lot of
reading them.
places.
So why do we want to default to Deerfield?
Only in the Deerfield area,
Why do we want to default to
Because-
Deerfield only in the Deerfield area?
so that they can actually make improvements to their buildings and not be out of compliance
With the requirements of
with the other requirements. That's what we're finding. We're running up against, if they want to add a mechanical, addition, that's happened out here before. They're out of compliance because that mechanical addition doesn't meet the standards of the Highway 9. So they have to go in and get a variance for that every time.
But everything isn't built out in there, is it?
No.
There are a few parcels left that's not,
So
that
for
are
the,
not.
I guess that's what I was thinking about. For things that are not
They're
built
very
out
few.
or redeveloped, why wouldn't we want to hold them to the more stringent of the two?
Because it's a whole different
Well,
atmosphere.
the biggest thing is the Highway 9 sets the height limitation of 2 stories.
Although we do allow it
So
for
is Deerfield.
Deerfield and Morris.
No, Deerfield is higher.
No, it's not.
Yeah, it is.
It's 2 stories on everything except
Deerfield and Morris.
Yeah.
We
I think
and
we-
so that's okay.
Yeah.
So we're okay with that. But I think it's a part of that is just the whole feel, and a lot of it's the architectural treatment of the buildings. When you have an office building, I think Terry's talked about, they're going to have sheets of glass. We don't even allow sheets of glass to be in Highway 9. So I will say, and I'm not
Well,
clear.
that's a good example. I mean, that to me is something that makes sense to have a difference, right? Because it's a different aesthetic.
Right, and that's what the point of Deerfield is.
Yeah, but defaulting to Deerfield automatically and saying, regardless, if there's a conflict, it's going to control, to me.
But it
Like-
doesn't address
let's-
it, then
let
it
me-
goes back.
Let me
to
clearly
nine.
say, I wasn't a proponent of just taking Deerfield and adopting it. The
Well,
group as a
well,
whole
I'm
ended
not
up saying
it's
that
because
they
Adam's
wanted to
not
do
here.
that,
I-
yeah.
I-
I
Well,
think,
it's
I think
gonna
there
be-
could be higher restrictions placed on Deerfield by the city, and the city should actually really do that.
Well, that was my.
It's
But-
an unusual position for us to take. But we got to remember too, this is it's a small area of the city, and this is where we said we wanted our development to go.
See, this is where we ought to be saying to Adam, we'll do that and adopt and let you keep that if you de-annex the other portion from Alpharetta and
I
put it
knew
back
you were
in.
going to go there.
Absolutely.
Okay, I'm not touching that.
Sorry.
Well, you gotta,
And I
you gotta
think,
use your levers when you can.
yeah.
This is an opportunity.
But if something is not addressed, then we default back to Highway 9.
Yeah, if it's silent,
Okay.
we'll go back to Highway 9.
Right.
So, just back to the original point, so within the Highway 9, we're saying we prefer mechanical units to be on the roof. Terry's point, which I agree with, is the 4-foot high maximum parapet may not screen it from view, unless the building's big enough that it's far enough back from the parapet that the angle won't let you see it. If it's a small enough building, 4 feet won't cover it.
Right.
I'd rather have a higher parapet and have it screened than to limit the parapet to 4. Can we say?
I think we just took it out.
Yeah, if
Right.
you take it out, you just say it's required to be
Last sentence
screened.
of G.
And H.
Yeah.
You gotta do the same
And
thing.
H.
in eight.
And H, right.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
That's
No, it's
okay.
okay.
So you're striking H completely?
No, just
No,
the last
last
one.
sentence.
No part.
Parapets.
Restate.
For G and H, yeah.
Okay. I had one change and one question in I. Do we want do we want man-made stone?
They had this discussion.
Yeah, this is
Okay.
done.
Yeah,
Okay.
go ahead.
Next.
Take it away.
No, if you had it, I'll shut up. I don't want to regurgitate. If you guys, if that committee feels like that's what we want, then.
There are high enough grades of man-made stone that I dare you to figure out which it is.
Okay. So, can we say high enough grades of man-made stone?
Well, it's subject to the DRB.
It's
It's subject to the DRB. They have to get it through the
They'll have to bring a
DRB.
sample.
And, you know, if they bring in a piece that you can clearly say,
It's a
See, that gets
It's
back to my earlier
styrofoam.
point. When you say they gotta get it through the DRB, that was what I was referring to before. You guys have approval authority now. The way-
Yeah, they
In my
have.
opinion, the way this reads, it doesn't read that you got approval
it's,
authority.
it needs to
Well,
be,
I was gonna say, right now, actually, they have recommending authority
no, we don't.
No, they've got approval authority.
Approval authority.
for a certificate of endorsement. That certificate of endorsement is a recommendation.
That's
To
not-
me,
that's-
is how
that's
it
not-
reads
that's
Now,
not
we,
the way
by the
it
way, I
is.
stepped down. I don't
That-
Yeah,
do that.
yeah.
Oh, no.
Oh, yes.
In the overlay district, yeah.
Since when?
Since the first of the year.
Good for you.
You gonna be next?
I decided
We're not having mass
next-
I wanted to take a
exit.
hiatus.
Yeah.
I had over 12 years of being involved in the DRB up here, and I was
Well,
done.
I don't blame you,
Completely
but I
agree, just
but I
Huh?
think we're.
Yeah, he's
I'm off the board.
Is that right?
Yeah.
All right,
And
so
it's
certificates of
too bad.
endorsement.
Blood.
Certificates of
I,
endorsement.
I'm not saying I'm not ever coming back, but
Can we revisit?
I need to take a.
Ordinance
I was
that
getting
change
jaded.
their
Yeah.
status, because that's not the way I remember it.
Well, we can, but
I don't mean change
not
it.
tonight.
No.
No, I
mean
think
change
the
it.
way
I
the
mean,
ordinance
read it,
was-
Because what I remember when that ordinance was approved, is we argued it shouldn't be that way.
Yeah.
Oh, when the overlay districts were approved?
No.
No, it was a
A
separate.
separate thing, and when that came before us, we, no
Okay.
offense to Terry or the DRB, we argued that it was inappropriate to give a appointed board
Yeah.
decision authority.
Well, planning authority had planning.
No, it's a recommend, they have recommendation.
Recommendation, city council.
Anyway,
But well, I guess my point was that as we are reading it now, it's a recommendation to the planning department. We're the ones that actually approve the permit.
okay.
So,
Uh,
of course,
Yeah.
we're hard pressed to do anything the DRB didn't like anyway, but.
My other point in I was, I would say unpainted or unstained, or unpainted / just unstained.
We're losing that point here, for example. As recommended by,
Yeah,
you know, it was approved, yeah, it's recommended.
yeah, and I remember it the other way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, well, go back to what you're
George,
saying.
The very last
Unpainted,
sentence of I
unstained.
just want to add unstained as differentiated
Unpainted.
from unpainted.
No yellow wood.
At the end of I.
Unpainted and unstained pressure-treated wood.
When those commercials come on, I change the channel, I find them so
Oh,
offensive.
they are, they're worse.
I either mute it or I change
They
the.
don't even know how to spell yellow, they must be from Macon.
Yeah. Birthday cone, you mean?
Actually, in southern Alabama, I have to know.
Oh, man.
Okay,
All right.
Jay, I have a question. We got a picture there that, purposefully speaks to what was on the prior page, so you can put brick or stone posts in your fence. Does the 55-inch height include the post, or is it just the fence itself?
It should include the post.
Yeah.
I think we should be clear about that, because the post is clearly higher than the fence, right?
Put the fence, yeah, I mean, that's an old fence, but.
Anyway, yeah, we'll do that.
Well, it's an interesting question. We had the discussion last night with the sign
Fences
ordinance. It says, you know, the signs have to be a certain size, and they can't exceed X height. And my question was, does that include the supporting post? And-
Monument.
And the discussion that came back to me was no, that it did not include the post. So it was like, well, then how do we write that? So we have a to-do on that, because we need, we're either need to be, we're not consistent.
So you can put up a billboard support as long as your sign is down. at the
Exactly,
bottom.
you can have 30 foot, right, you know.
Like a flagpole.
Yeah,
Just any flag.
change.
Have
All
staff.
structural members.
Yeah, so we need to be consistent with that.
I had a question in 1093 also. A says that sidewalks have to be a minimum of 6 feet wide. And when you get down to F, multi-use paths, for the pedestrian portion only has to be 5 feet wide. Why the difference?
I think they're just justifying their 15-foot width that they're requiring
Yeah,
for the
within that
multi-use
15.
Well,
paths. I
that
think
whole
that's
thing
what
was
that
kind
is.
of goofy,
Yeah.
because it's saying 6 feet up on top. Then it's saying if you're just gonna be a bike and pedestrian, you have to be, or a multi-use 12. But then it's saying, there's a further clarification saying multi-use paths have to be 15, and then it's defining specifically 10 feet.
No, that
That's
says that
if
they're
you
separate.
separate
But see,
them.
that's why I was
Yeah, on
asking,
the
if they're
same
separate,
side.
if they're separate, why is this 5 and the first
Oh,
one 6?
separate paths, okay.
It's not saying if it's 15 feet,
That's
you
a good
allow
question,
this and
I
that,
don't
right? It's saying if they're
No.
separate, it has to be, it just seems to me it ought to be consistent. If 6 is the right number, it ought to be 6. For somebody else to figure out.
Well, if you can see if they have
I
one
don't,
that's
I don't
just
even know where that even
bicycles.
came from originally.
I don't see one that's just bicycles.
Well, don't they usually want bicycles to be on the
On the
street?
street.
Yeah.
You can't ride a
This
bicycle.
one, these
on
are
the
designed
sidewalk.
specifically for bicyclists, according to them. Or,
I would think whatever the plan, the bike, not bike,
Speaking
but
of, speaking of
trail
bicycles,
plan.
one of the things I noticed in your guys', I don't know what to call it, report or whatever, but your document was that there needed to be bicycle racks must be included in every development. I don't see that in here.
It should be. It's
Well,
in there.
I might have
Yeah,
missed it.
it's in there.
It wasn't, if it was here, it was here before. It wasn't added as an edit.
Correct. It was already there. It's
It's
per
already there.
development. That's always been there.
So before we leave this question about 6 feet versus whatever, 5 versus 15, and we probably need to think about that some more, because whoever just said a minute ago, if we're trying to push bikes to the street, and yet we don't necessarily have a street plan for cyclists today, we're not being bicycle friendly throughout the entire city. So
What are you talking about? We're putting in racks so you can park.
If you can make it there.
gotta make sure you can get bumped off before you get there.
Make it there.
It's like take your life in your hands and just park it, you may leave it there and walk home on the 5 foot wide or maybe 6 foot wide concrete path. You're just not sure if it's gonna be 5 or 6. If you're a blind person, that would be.
Should that get coordinated with
With
the
the
Milton
public
Trails plan?
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it
it's
should
just-
be.
Thought it was 6.
Just,
Let's talk to
Kinda do
public
some
works.
housekeeping
Well,
on
I guess now
Public Works
Cindy.
and Parks, yeah.
Yeah, so
Well,
usually
we'll ask them both.
Yeah.
Public Works question.
You know, you're joking, but the other thing I saw here, do we care when you've got a multi-use path?
Which
where they're
section?
separate, which
Yeah.
one's on the street, and which one's inside?
That's up to the public works.
yeah.
Okay.
So we are gonna try to clarify that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because if we are pushing bikes to the street, we have to
Okay.
be street friendly.
I have a question about K.
Okay.
This is,
Okay.
this is inter-parcel walkways. Is striping a distinguishing feature enough? Because it doesn't appear that it is. It's got colors, texture, difference in rise, or a combination of. And it seems like most of the walkways we've got in most of the developments we have right now have none of those. They just have striping of some sort.
Well, a combination assumes that you'll do more than once. You
Well-
do more than just striping. I mean, I think that's the intent
Publix
here.
Publix at Bethany Village, as an example, has nothing except white
Okay.
stripes. There's
I
no
wonder what
color,
that's
no
about.
texture, no rise.
And that was probably developed prior to this.
There's nothing in Semler's development.
Oh.
There is a
Target.
public, there is a Target, but you go to the out parcels, there's nothing there.
Stripes.
There's nothing there but stripes.
I know in the street corridor, the
The
semi-street.
main
Yeah,
corridor,
those
there
main
is-
corridors.
Main corridor
that
there
are-
is, but not
where
between
crossover.
out parcels and.
And
other-
then parking, right?
Right.
I'm not pushing striping, all I'm saying is if this is what we mean, are we really gonna enforce that for all interparcel walkways?
Well, we should.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
That's what we're trying to do.
White stripes are colors.
Sorry.
Yeah, but we're trying to get a combination.
White stripe is colored.
Okay.
With buttons or something.
Little flashing, lights.
No
that light.
flashing, no.
They can be neon too.
In O, I would add the word adjacent. Pedestrian connectivity between residential and adjacent non-residential developments is required. I mean, if somebody puts something 4 miles away from Publix, we don't want them to have to create pedestrian connectivity, right?
Okay.
Wasn't that a discussion, I seem to remember having a discussion about that, where in some cases, some of the residential don't want the connectivity.
Right, well, that's what happened with Assembler by the Coles, where
Yeah.
the multifamily was. They didn't want the connection. That's what the DRI, the ARC recommended.
Yeah,
Or whoever did that.
So we're mandating it here, but you
Yeah.
could come and request that it not be.
request a variance for it, but,
Well, or if the city wanted to say you don't.
Well,
we
one
want
would
you to do
argue,
that,
well,
then
what's
it's gotta be-
pedestrian connectivity? You could have said if you go out to the sidewalk along Deerfield, and then you can, so it's all kind of a little subjective what
Yeah.
that is, so I think that's how.
I didn't, like I say, I didn't understand in paths shall be direct and convenient routes between points of origin. Okay, but what are we saying paths are?
I think it's a generalization, whether it's sidewalks or whether it's the interparcel.
It's giving us a little
issues.
room.
Okay. No further questions?
What's a Cobra lighting feature?
Looks like a cobra.
Yeah, it's
Oh,
it's
it's
the type of
down-
head
downlit,
on the
okay.
street, on the parking lot lamp.
on
Or
C,
street lamp, too.
incandescent in 3 years is gonna be non-existent.
Yeah.
No.
George is trying to pass a law, if they're
Yeah.
manufactured in Georgia, they can be sold in Georgia.
Yeah,
Yep.
Of course, nobody makes them in Georgia right now, so.
but that's still the state's federal
That's a
rights
limited-
routine
limited market.
going on
Yeah.
there. Then probably, another one actually that's gonna be probably coming up pretty quickly is
LED.
LED.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I wanna see the first guy that puts in natural gas lights.
So you're saying we should put in LED?
We probably should.
I
We're gonna
would,
be going
yeah,
there.
I'd take natural gas out. It's not sustainable.
You like natural gas? It's so cute.
It's not sustainable. Natural gas burns during the day,
I know there's-
24/7.
There's a subdivision on Haynes Bridge near me. They have this nice romantic gas lights, and it cracks me up. It's like a seven house subdivision along the street, and there's like these really pretty gas lights, and they're just like burning.
Yeah,
It's
not a sustainable practice.
Part of our homeowner association is that you must have them and you must burn them. Period.
Gas lights.
Really? Is that why you have them too?
Well, White Columns is required to have a certain type, but it's permissible to have an actual, it's like that, the flame that burns inside the, whatever fabric
Okay.
bulb is.
Right.
But it was permissible to have an actual open flame, so we have an open flame.
Huh.
So you have to, but it is required.
Yep, we're required to.
Or-
Painted the
But
Yeah,
ballast burn out so fast.
that's why I actually switched.
That's why he
to
said they're
open
not
flame.
sustainable. We'll just
And
take them
then
out.
there's no-
Did you switch when you moved, or did you switch your fixture? Yeah.
The first house had the original.
Yeah.
but then
Thinking about doing
The
that.
second house.
Okay.
Anything else on this page?
Had the same comment, there's all this
So we had the discussion about, so
Where are you?
G. Yeah, it says it's out, but it's really in. Shoebox, cover lighting for neon lights are prohibited, so we're saying neon lights should be included? No, we shouldn't.
No, the LED lighting fixtures, well, we're talking about, it appears that we're talking about these parking lot lights. again.
Right, yeah, we're not talking about
You know, yeah, so
sign.
not neon, but LED will probably be the next.
So it's okay to keep neon in there.
But I'm wondering if we're just restating C. Why do you even have it? Just take it out entirely.
Well, C doesn't include neon.
No, well, we don't really want neon.
That's my point. So you either-
Yeah, so
you either
we're
add
just
it
being
in
really
C
obvious.
Or leave.
Or just
Well, you-
take out G entirely.
You could, in C, you could say neon is not a permitted light source, or whatever, right there, and be done with it. But,
Well, we just leave it the way it is because we
Yeah,
are dealing
that-
with
that actually-
shoebox and Cobra lighting.
yeah, because we're not allowing the shoebox or the Cobra lighting, it has to be that more decorative fixture.
So we're leaving it like it is.
Yeah, I would leave it.
Here we got this again, you know, you can be the Phillips representative.
Oh, no, I said, she laughed as I said it.
Would we, so what is the word on neon signs versus lights?
We're not talking about signs.
Yeah, signs are not part of the discussion. As far as neon lights, I don't, like I said, I don't expect.
I know that you can't outline your building.
It's not to say that, you know, you couldn't make a parking lot light that was neon, but I don't expect that there would be, and we're saying that we're prohibiting them here, so.
Well, can you just say, we're saying lighting, we want to say lights.
No, we don't put sign stuff in this part.
Yeah,
It goes in the sign
We've
ordinance.
addressed the neon on the
Buildings
buildings in
later on.
separate
Right, yeah, I
sections,
saw
so.
that.
Yeah, we can't
Yeah.
mix, we
You
can't
turn-
intermingle
well,
the
How are we going to
sign.
find the strip club out of this?
They're allowed in Deerfield, apparently. So parking requirements for them. 1095, on page 9. This is just me now, but I don't think that D, I, L, M, and N belong in here. I think they belong over in that section with.
So we
We
moved
moved D.
D.
We moved
Already, but I think I, L, M, and N are in the same category. They don't deal with building materials and architectural treatments.
So I, L, M, and N.
That's-
Well, L and M are the scale and massing of the buildings themselves, it's not necessarily their placement.
Yeah, but that isn't building materials and architectural treatments, is it?
Massing is design of the building itself.
Okay.
Let's see. N is also design of the building itself. So maybe just D and I. N is design of the building itself too. I mean, it's not really got to do with building placement, it's height.
That- okay.
We
No,
can
go ahead.
change our.
It just gets lost to me. This is
Well, it
architectural
does, I
treatments,
mean-
This isn't design.
Well, that,
To me, this is building materials and aesthetics is what this section's about. And to me, height of the building is something much more black and white.
well, maybe it shouldn't.
We can
Is
change
that
the title.
is that a new title, or is that the old title?
that's
That's
the
the old
original, that's the old title.
We could change the title, building materials and architectural design.
Or just say architectural design, just.
Okay.
Architectural design.
Tri-echo.
My,
Moving right.
we need to look at L and M once we understand what the design review board's role is.
Yes.
It's been changed here away from what I thought it was. And then in the end, I don't know what the last part of that means. There's a 2-story maximum height of 30 feet, excluding Morris Road and Deerfield Parkway.
All
What is it?
streets.
What is it for Morris Road and Deerfield Parkway?
would be whatever the district standard would be, or if they would get a use permit for a height extension. So, like, for instance, office and C1, the height is actually 40 feet or 4 stories. That's the permitted for C1 and O and I. And if you get a use permit to get a 10-story building, then that would be permitted as
So
well.
anywhere on Morris Road and Deerfield Parkway is not subject to 30-foot limitation?
Correct. Yeah, that's how, it might be clear as mud, but that's what's the intent.
On C, I'd kind of like to see that expanded, that it really required architectural treatment 360 degrees versus only if it's visible from a public street or a single-family residence.
Shall be 360
What
degrees.
would you call
Well-
architectural treatment there?
Well, I mean, this could, under this scenario, to a certain degree, it's kind of what we were dealing with the Global Crossings people up here. But because the back of their building was against Walmart and everything else, that they wanted to just leave it as a cinder block, unfinished wall, untreated wall.
So the walls at Publix or the walls at, what's the drugstore at Rucker and House?
Right
Is it accurate or?
Right.
Yeah, where they've
Right.
very
Yep.
creatively put a little inset brick wall to imply that it's some sort of a
Brick
filled
finish.
Oh, I mean, they're just massive brick walls. Is that architectural treatment?
To a level it is, yeah. Otherwise, it could be just a straight wall.
Just
What would take care of that would be the massing requirement. We'd then have to say, okay, no, you need to, or the fenestration, you've got to vary the wall, and pop it in and pop it out, you know.
I'm just curious. I mean, it's their call, and I guess it's security in their cases. But the Publix at Birmingham, I mean, I think it looks terrible on the outside. But Costco's no different. You know, there's this 100-yard run of brick wall, and if they put a little 2-foot insets every 10 or
Like-
20 feet, it doesn't change that a bit to me. But anyway, I was just curious.
Yeah.
That's what you were talking about.
Well, the
If that's
alternative, if you
victory,
don't
I
have any
consider
if you don't have any requirement, then
Cinder block.
there'll be a blank wall for sure.
block instead of brick.
Yeah, under this scenario, yeah.
I was just curious.
Coles did a good job on theirs on the side there.
Yes, they
Break
did.
it
That's
up.
because the
They
DRB
did a much
pushed
better
them.
job.
I guess
Yeah, we pushed
what
one
he's
hard.
saying, if we hadn't had that in there, it could have been just a cinder block wall. Should have
Well, not a
been
cinder
done.
block, but yeah, it would be interesting. So,
360 degree, Terry?
Well, it should be all sides, really. I
agree
think we
with
should
that.
take
No,
the, I think we should say it's only the visible locations, because you never know, especially on property that is next to it that's not zoned, that suddenly gets zoned.
Yeah, the people in townhouses behind Target may argue that the back of Target's visible,
Yeah.
even though.
Or it's undeveloped property then, so I'm not abutting any of those, so I got a blank wall, and then the next development that comes in has to look at the blank wall.
So we agree, all the way around.
So it really ought to be all sides of the building should meet the standards.
Okay, so remove the front portion of that sentence. So it starts architectural treatment shall continue through all sides.
All
All
sides.
sides.
This may sound like a stupid question, but has anybody ever actually pulled out the Pantone chart?
oh, I
Those-
have it.
that
I need to
whole-
go get
Oh,
it.
yeah.
No,
I'm
that
sorry.
whole
Talking about
chart
bringing
needs to get changed.
You want the whole chart?
We
No.
found
Well,
out the hard way,
it
that one of
needs-
the things we'd specified was something we absolutely did not want.
Yeah, that whole color chart. I mean,
Okay, yeah.
Buck threw that together 15 years ago, 12 years ago, when we were writing the first overlay,
Yeah,
and it was,
the charts changed.
the charts never Never been changed.
Yeah.
It needs to be looked at. Yeah, there's a,
The other thing we bumped
Kinda like Quantum Bank.
is in you here. I was gonna say we had to take wood shingle and wood shake out of here.
Why is that?
Well, I think what we concluded before is that the fire hazard that's associated with that didn't justify the aesthetic.
It is a fire hazard. I mean,
Ask Mark
but-
Waller.
Yeah, I was gonna say, exactly.
So
But without getting off track, does anyone know what started that? I read that it
Still
started,
under investigation.
Yeah, it's still under.
that sounded like
It was on the front page of the.
not an accident, maybe.
Oh, no, it was an accident.
For sure?
Oh, so do they know what started it?
It's still under investigation. Publicly, no, but
It's still under investigation, but they know it was an accident.
they know it was pretty much an accident, yeah. I mean, it was, yeah.
Okay.
if I had to guess, it was probably a
Just
grill
freak
that
of
was
nature.
left on a part on the deck.
I thought it was their front, I read something,
Mhm.
it was their front porch or
Yes.
something. It said,
Where it
it's
said it started.
an odd place to have an electrical problem.
Well,
But,
you know those
With all the
little,
lightning that was going on.
you know those little round things that you build your fire in?
Fire pit.
oh
yourself
yeah,
warm.
right, right.
Bet you if you
But
found
their whole
research a
point
little
is
further, that's probably what it
Lightning
was.
hit.
As soon
Oh,
as
yeah.
that
Could have been.
fire hit that
Right.
roof, the house was gone.
But yeah, and the hardest part, honestly, from what the fire department was telling us too, was to keep it from spreading to the other houses that are required to have those same shingles.
Well, those are expensive.
Yes, they are.
And someone's really gotta wanna do it, you know, to pony up the money to,
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
so I don't know.
I don't know that commercial insurers are real keen on insuring them either. Tara, do you have any idea on that?
They hate them.
Well, I mean, do you wanna restrict something that somebody's gotta really wanna do to do it and
No, I don't have a
take
problem
the
with it.
risk? I don't know.
I mean, aesthetically, it's fine. I don't
Yeah,
have an issue
I
with
like it.
aesthetically.
What's that?
Yeah, the wood shake.
But do you think there's a safety factor maybe that ought to be considered in this public good?
Yeah, I mean,
Thanks, John.
particularly for something like this, is maybe in the middle of a bunch of stuff, right? I mean, if it's a standalone house,
That's
generally.
valid.
That's not nice.
I was just kidding. I should have said it while he was here, so it would have been more.
Just to remind you where the Hun is that
Sure don't want to ask to go to the bathroom.
What do we're not gonna do anything with that tonight, are we, the Pantone chair?
We've got it. It's up to y'all.
Well, we still gotta do it at some
It's
point.
shades of gray, pretty much.
Well, I know, but I added some and then tried to, I mean, whatever. If
Yeah.
we can
Show us the
offline
reds
do
that
some
you
stuff.
Yeah.
Huh?
Show us the reds that you added,
483.
483 and 84C,
43, I'm sorry.
483, 484.
Yeah. These, I mean, generally, so these are these top twos. Oh, wait, you guys can do whatever you want to. I don't care. We can go with that one. That's kind of like Target red, but it's a little orange. but
That's the
anyway.
red they painted the building in Birmingham.
And then, what building?
The barn. The
The
barn.
barn. Yeah, so what other color you want to know?
Kind of
Seven,
like
four,
the
7, 4,
door to
11.
the dining room.
7411.
7414.
They're listed under reds. But do I need to look at any of these?
No, those, well, yeah.
And we are saying that these are the only permitted colors
7415.
for
Accents, paints, any kind of.
And that's the other thing I did was, here's some of the reds. Seven, well, the lower ones? The lower ones.
74, 11, 14, and 15, and 19.
Right, this is 19, right here. There's 11.
7411.
Can't find 11. But, Terry, what I did was instead of having the accents and that, I just put them all together, so it's like people can be more creative about what they do for their accents and their main materials, and y'all, I mean,
None
the
of them were
DRB.
outlandish. I mean,
But I'm just saying it gave more.
Typically, those have been, you know, if someone wants to come in and use a unique color, they'll ask the DRB, and then the DRB.
And then that's what it says. It's up to
It
them.
was the,
There's 7411.
autism,
That's 7411.
didn't the
Let
autism
me
center
see.
ask
Yeah.
for a special color?
Yeah, yeah.
Yes, ask for
They got
two special
variances,
colors.
yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
That's hardly red,
Let
Robin.
me see.
What is it?
This is 7411.
Brown.
Well, it's red, orange, whatever. It's like the red.
Okay.
All right, well,
I'm
I'm
giving-
giving the tan list.
I'm
We
giving
wanted
it.
it to look like we had more of the other colors than
11, 14.
we could have accused of only having browns and beiges.
What?
15.
Well, you know, that's. I mean, it doesn't. It's.
There's no Auburn Tiger colors.
That's right. 19.
Was your red okay? Pretty much fine.
20, 22.
It's pink.
What? What do you think?
7522C?
Did I say that?
Yeah. That's 22C.
7522C?
Did I
Oh,
left
sorry.
in
It's
or I
Ah,
added?
okay, now, wait a minute, wait a minute, wait a minute.
My mistake.
Right.
7519, check that too. 7515.
You really got that. There goes the pink.
The only thing is, it's leaking better. This
22.
Okay.
26.
Even the greens in there aren't
Better.
good greens because it's already listed. There's some greens.
All right.
Okay,
Well,
I
they were
got
the
it.
right ones.
Like if you read the right numbers, like, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, we can add some.
Yeah, I think you just need to maybe kind of broaden it a little more.
Even more? What do you want us to look at? Olives?
Terry, the question I would have, and you guys looked at this, we didn't, but if what was the, I don't remember which building it was, but when the autism
Yeah, that's what we just
center
said.
Yeah,
came in,
yeah.
the discussion I remember is the colors that you guys recommended were colors that weren't even part of what was allowed at that point.
No, they didn't. They came in and wanted those colors.
Right, but we liked them.
And we said that they were acceptable, we would like them, but they had to get a variance
Right.
to use them.
But my question is, if they're acceptable, we like them, why would we not now put them into what's
Well,
acceptable?
they could be.
Yeah, I can go back and look at that.
But those, for the building type and the location may be incorrect. You may not want to necessarily
See,
have
those
them
were actually a little.
somewhere else.
They were pretty.
Those were intense colors, and intense colors, historic type colors.
Yeah, no, I agree.
They were very Charleston.
But they're, yeah,
Yeah.
but they may not fit throughout.
Everywhere, yeah.
Milton as a whole.
Remember, the word that they used was those were wayfinding colors.
Yes.
You know, I think that's different than something you're trying to do aesthetically blend into a larger area.
I don't disagree with you, but what I remember about the other building that they didn't change the colors on was I thought it was ugly in comparison.
You mean the vocational school?
Yeah.
It kind of
Yeah.
more beige.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was
Well-
meeting all these colors.
Well,
Yeah.
but, so, I don't think it's,
Yeah.
to your original question, should we then put them in? I
Pink
don't know
could've
that
been
it's
fine
appropriate to
with
put them in, because it's
This-
a very acceptable color.
this whole
when
chart-
that specific application was for the purpose of wayfinding.
Well,
You don't wanna-
I don't disagree with you. I guess my point, though, is that with the colors that Robin's added in, to me, they fall in the same category because we've now said that those reds and things are acceptable anyway, right?
Or, but it's always still going to have the approval of the design review board if it's their opinion
How's the
that.
design review board going to say you can't use it if it's in here as an acceptable color, though?
I mean, they can encourage them for other.
No,
I mean,
I'm serious.
If someone wants to push back, typically what we've been able to do in the design review board, and I think going forward we'll be able to do the same thing, is you say, we really don't like it. Can you look at something else? In most cases, they will.
Yeah, I understand.
And
But-
it doesn't get down, you know, if it gets to a point where they're gonna press a lawsuit for it, we don't have any room to stand.
This is
But
kind
a
of.
design review board doesn't have that, but
This
we've
is
got
kind
enough
of-
latitude, you've got
this is
enough
kind of
latitude.
Somebody that had a hot pink house built two doors from me. Right? It was literally almost Pepto-Bismol color house.
It's
White
faded.
column?
It's faded. Huh?
In white columns?
Yeah.
I totally missed that.
Well, as Paul said, it's faded. I mean,
Pretty striking.
I think peer pressure got them to paint it a little bit more subtle color, but that red, for example, that's the barn in Birmingham, this is now saying that that can be anywhere.
Yeah.
And it's not just an accent color. it
Well,
can
and
be-
Highway 9.
Well, yeah. I know it's Highway 9, but imagine Publix in that color.
But that goes back to the high, but it gives you have to, there's gotta be a balance between,
Well, but see, this chart was divided up in a way that these were approved
Right.
colors for building walls and other things, and these were accent colors. If there's reds that need to be, then they maybe need to be over in the accent.
Right, and
The
I'm-
accent
and I'm-
distinguishing is gone, too.
right, and
Yeah,
I've
yeah.
gotten rid of that.
So I think that whole, this whole chart needs to be looked at as a whole because
I agree.
it's replicated in every one of the overlays as it exists right now.
Yeah.
Although, wouldn't you think that like Birmingham has different color, a little bit different?
I don't
No,
think it does.
doesn't
I think
have that
if you
much.
look, every one of those is back to
A little
the,
different, but maybe
If
not.
anything, Birmingham has probably fewer colors, but they're in the same color
Okay.
scheme.
Well, I know
Less
Birmingham's
browns and
is
tans.
different at least in that red, because that red that is the barn was in the Birmingham thing. and it wasn't in here.
and
The
then-
red you're talking about, which one was it?
483 or
It's-
4C,
Oh, 4.
one or the other.
483, yeah. Okay.
No, that's these two, right?
No, it's the one you.
Well, right
it's the
over,
one you
yeah,
got your
this
hand
one. Yeah, and
Yeah.
then there's this.
That one,
He's
this
saying
one
that
is
was,
485.
which I don't have on here.
Yeah, which is not on that list.
Robin pointed at that one.
That's
Robin.
486.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah,
That's okay.
it's top two.
Okay.
Top two are okay.
Birmingham has 485.
43.
What, that one, Highway
Is
9?
that is?
No.
Well, that's actually, it's probably pretty close to what Target had to get for their accent, for their balls, right? Nope.
Good
Move
luck.
on.
I'm not gonna touch it. I'm gonna touch it.
You could have just left it alone, Robert. Nobody would say a word. You know?
All right, just to get you.
That's why they put them out front.
This
They
on-
know they're going, look at your color.
this on
Your
ground?
color is the same as their
Is
ball.
this on ground?
Next.
Yeah, hurry, we're being recorded, guys. Let's go.
Hey, yeah.
Okay, any other?
Completely, it was an accurate statement.
Okay.
On E, it says, any non-residential building facade shall have a minimum of 25% fenestration or may be approved by the,
Whereas maybe if they're for the
yeah.
right.
That also should really be, what about multifamily?
Where are we? I'm sorry.
On
Yeah, it doesn't really say specifically multifamily,
Yeah,
it's
it
non-residential.
is, should,
It's
ought to say,
assumed, but
it ought
yeah.
to say non-residential and multifamily or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Page nine,
Because-
then you went back.
What we don't want are the end walls of rows of townhomes with blank walls.
Okay. Well, I'm multi now.
To which one?
Any non-residential
Oh,
building
up here.
facade, so it should be any non-residential and multifamily building facade. Are we back to 10, page 10? 11?
Yeah.
10 on
That's what I
X,
was
just
saying.
make sure we're,
Okay,
is 10, X.
okay, yep. Neon
Is-
lights,
Yeah,
outline.
you're just saying, just for outlining and detailing building features, didn't we earlier say the neon articulation or neon of any kind is prohibited?
Yes.
Now we're
Yeah.
being,
Well-
now we're being less, this is almost less prohibitive.
Yep.
I think that was,
We're on
wasn't
page
that
7.
addressing lighting, like street lights and
Under lighting.
It's
stuff?
really
Shoe-
talking about, yeah, shoebox cover,
Shoebox,
those are light
cover lighting,
fixtures.
and
Yeah.
neon lighting
Okay.
are prohibited.
Typically,
So-
those are in parking areas.
They're not conflicting each other, they're just adding up.
Yeah, my point is, I think you're painting yourself into a corner, and you're creating opportunities to say, well, the neon light is not outlining or detailing my building. My neon lighting is lighting.
It's an art.
Yeah.
Well, it's prohibited under lighting.
No, stay with it, Paul, 'cause I see where you're coming from.
Yeah. If somebody says, it's,
You did chose.
well, that's a sign.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
program
So
has.
do you start writing letters?
I'm just saying, I think there's a
Maybe it's
better
just,
way
maybe
to.
it's just a palm tree.
Yeah, I'm just thinking that there's a better way to say it, that is more all encompassing than by just saying outlining and detailing the building.
Okay.
We just
Maybe
say
we say
neon
Say
lighting,
neon
and then the
lighting.
type is prohibited.
On buildings.
Attached to buildings or on buildings.
We just,
Does that sound good?
Well, this is, what section are we in? It's building.
Page 10.
What
We're
are we
in
calling
building
it now?
architecture materials and
Yeah.
What do we call it? Design.
Right, it's at the bottom of 10.
I don't have the right wording, but I think it needs to be more restricted than that.
just say neon
Any
lighting.
neon lighting attached to a building is prohibited?
Well, we already said neon lighting is prohibited.
That's for lighting, though. That was
That's for
lighting.
street lights.
But I'm saying, no, it doesn't say streetlights. It
No,
just
but
says
in the
lighting.
other section, yes.
But it's a lighting section.
You can just say neon lighting is
You already said that.
prohibited.
But you already said that. 64-1094
Well,
is
no,
titled
I
lighting.
remember that, George, and I don't disagree with you, but that's important to have there. But in this section where we're saying, this is, what is this section called?
Really, it's neon lights and LED tubing, and what's the next iteration, Terry, that'll come out of that? I mean, you know,
This is architectural treatment.
Right,
So under architectural treatment.
because that's what we're
you
talking
need to
about,
say it again.
all of
Right.
those.
okay.
I agree.
And I don't know what the next,
Just maybe neon is not an approved lighting source. period.
Neon lighting is prohibited.
yeah,
Yep, that's what I said.
neon lights
Okay.
are prohibited.
On our,
Not just lights, neon lighting,
on our.
or
which
maybe
is
just lights.
Neon
Well, 'cause what
illumination
about the
sources.
sign thing, though? I mean, are we not
No,
gonna
no,
get
no,
into that?
Well,
I mean,
that's,
if we say all neon lights prohibited, then that kind of conflicts with when we get to the
Say on,
signage.
say on or attached to building.
well, it fixes the issue.
No. Okay, so we're saying,
You're coming at it from a
we're
whole
saying
different-
Walgreen on the corner of Highway 9, or of Old Milton and 9 would be prohibited.
Yeah.
They're more
Walgreens
Yes.
accessible
building,
sign.
okay.
Yep,
Well,
the
so would
mortar
Walgreens
pistol,
on
the
the building.
picture, yes.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, both
So,
of those
so
would
would
be.
Publix.
Yeah, both be
Yeah,
prohibited.
any of the little artwork things that you
But
would
I mean, the
see.
name Publix would be prohibited
Yeah,
on their building.
In neon,
Yeah.
exposed neon, yeah. You-
I don't
You can
know.
have
Well, I
it.
mean, every Publix except the one in Birmingham has Publix in neon on their building.
No, it's a covered sign face.
Say
Well,
what?
because
It's
it's
covered.
exposed.
It's covered.
Well, what's the illumination source?
Well, it
Walgreens
doesn't
is
matter,
not
yeah.
exposed.
You can use
We
neon.
just got through saying no illumination,
Well.
neon illumination sources.
well, and maybe we change it to no exposed, or.
Yeah, no exposed.
Yeah, because they use neon on a casing for lettering all the time, correct?
Yeah,
Well, and LED.
Yeah, LED too.
Yeah,
the
LED's
latest
really
is the
taking
LED.
over.
No, but that was my point. I mean, is that what we're trying to eliminate, is any neon, or is it just exposed?
Exposed.
Exposed neon lighting.
But,
It's
but
prohibited.
define exposed, I'm sorry. No, because
Yeah.
You
Walgreens
can see the gas.
Walgreens is not exposed. It's in a glass boxed-in design. It's not exposed.
Actually, they have gotten around it in that it's actually interior.
It's hanging inside the
It's
building, isn't
inside
it?
the building.
No, I thought,
Not
When you
exposed.
said that, I realized what they had done, yes.
It's not
We'll
exposed.
get there.
we dealt
Yeah,
with that.
and that's where you deal with it is in the signage,
Yeah,
because
sign.
the Northwest
Well, that's
overlay,
counted as a window
I
sign
think
if
if
it's
I remember
within 5
right, was
feet.
written that you can't have any of that
Well, I
visible
don't even remember
inside
5
the
feet, I just
store.
remember
Right.
visible.
Oh, and
I think it's
spent
within 5
hours on
feet.
it.
I think
Driving
that's
down
how
there
it's
fighting
accurate.
like
That's
screaming.
years
Yeah.
ago.
Yeah. But on R, real quick, it says exposed concrete masonry units.
Did we finish that? Did we
I
say?
think we're gonna
we
say
finished it by
exposed
saying
neon
exposed?
lighting are prohibited.
Yeah, okay.
On R, which is up above that, it says exposed concrete masonry unit block is a non-approved material, but then just above it, it allows for architectural. What that ought to say is really standard or smooth face or exposed standard CMU, I think would be what it should say. In other words,
Yeah, we're allowing it a split base, but
Yeah.
okay.
Okay, so on R, we say that it's exposed.
exposed standard concrete
Okay.
masonry units.
I have a question on B on the next page on parking. Yeah. All developments which exceed the minimum number of, there's a word elements, of required parking spaces, it should say of parking spaces required by the zoning ordinance. Should be constructed of pervious material. So if the zoning ordinance says you need 100 and you're planning on installing 120, those 20 have to be pervious. Okay.
And then,
And the exterior periphery row.
right, because,
Right.
yeah, so it might not be very economical just to do 20 or
No,
10,
understand.
then you, yeah.
And also going back to R,
Okay,
it says are prohibited as exterior finishes. That ought to really be wall finishes, because
I'll finish.
we come down under roofs and allow for those to be standing seam metal roofs and those types of things.
Sorry, Terry, I thought you were finished with R. Are you finished with R?
Yeah.
At least one bicycle parking area should be provided for each non-residential development. There you go.
I lost that one before.
Nothing about horse posts.
No, I'm surprised that you're not reacting to that. I mean, does that mean that if I allow space for one bike, I've satisfied that?
No,
Well, it does.
one
You
bicycle
get a
parking
bike rack
area.
that just has one, but
I'm sorry?
if you can get a bike rack that just has one
What,
spot,
those
I
ones
suppose.
at Target have like
Well, this
two little
doesn't say,
bubbles
this
there,
doesn't
two or
say,
three.
Actually, if
this
Yeah.
doesn't say you have to have a rack, it just says a parking area, so all I have to do is say, there, that corner over there is where you can park your bike.
I just put a B by bicycle. It's required.
Actually, we pretty much make them
No,
put
you're
it,
serious.
but we actually do.
I'm serious.
Yeah, you're
If you
right.
go back to the work that those guys did, you know, there was a specific,
Rack and everything.
There's a rack.
there's a rack, right? You know,
Well, that's
what
because
they
we
said
enforce,
required.
well, that's not exact, that's an example.
No, I know that, but
It's a
this is a
rack.
parking rack must be provided. This
Okay.
doesn't say
Well, we can
that.
add, but to be honest, George, we make them put a rack in, we don't just say put a P for the floor. I don't know, so,
But let's expand it and make sure.
That's fine.
Okay, yeah,
We can do that.
A rack, and
Yeah.
at least
And
one
make
bicycle
sure it's
parking
a
rack shall be
It's a Smith
provided.
and Wesson bicycle
Oh,
rack,
s-
27-6.
Within Pantone color range.
Black. Gotta be black.
Find out where the kickbacks come.
Is there any point in talking about the Deerfield thing? I mean, if you're saying you're adopting it as it is.
well, no, it really isn't. This is the Deerfield, that's, I mean, it's a watered down version to what we
Pared
can
it down to what
enforce,
we really
yeah.
I understand, but what I thought I heard is that we don't have the license to change it.
Well, I mean,
You do have a license to
Yeah.
change it, but we're trying to not change it as much
if there's
as
something that
possible.
we're missing or whatever, so.
Well, I have one question, just in terms of a general question. In 1101, the second,
Okay.
if standards are not specified in the state road and overlay, then this ordinance will apply. If standards aren't specified in the Deerfield area section, which is this, then standards in state road 9 shall apply. So, if they're in both, then this one prevails, but what if they're neither?
Then we go to Northwest.
No.
No?
No.
Oh, that's right, I'm sorry.
totally
No,
separate.
this was
Right.
written
This is
totally
separate.
separate.
That's right, I
Separate
forgot.
check.
Highway 9.
It's a separate family.
Yeah, which I don't understand why that ever happened, but
Well, I think because they wanted to be different, right? I don't know, I wasn't there, but
Yeah, I
I'm
guess
just
I don't
saying.
mind.
I was doing Curtis's work.
I
Standard.
think Adam had a lot to do with
Standards.
that. Had a lot to do with Highway 9 being its own standalone.
Commercial.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
Then I get to make it up.
Okay. It just seemed to me that it's kind of, if it's not here, it's there, and if it's not there, it's here, but that leaves an awful lot of possibilities that aren't described.
And they come up every day.
There's no default, is all I'm saying.
well, a default could be the development standards for hydrology, the default could be the subdivisions.
We'll find something.
Yeah, I mean, there's other
I
rules.
wasn't being facetious, I was
No.
really thinking of what Lynn said, if it's not covered in either, then the community development director will make the decision, you know.
We'll come up with something, one way or the other.
I have a question, and then,
Yeah, go ahead.
where are you?
I was gonna go to page 14.
Kind of a question at 13. On 14, I'm sorry, 13.3, is there a standard definition for landscape island? Because when I read this, it was at least one 9-foot minimum landscape island should be provided for every 15 parking
typical-
spaces. And my question was, do we designate, what the actual, other than 9 feet, is that in
Yeah.
length? Is that?
That's the width. And length would be the parking length of the parking bay, or parking.
So let's
So just add the word
typically
wide.
18 to 20.
Yeah.
Just add the word
But
wide.
9
wide.
foot?
Same wording as the number 4.
Minimum 9 foot, minimum 9 foot wide.
Same.
But but how long?
Well, it's for the length of the parking spot, which is what, typically
18 to 20.
Okay, so shouldn't it say then maybe
Well,
a minimum
that's
of
just
9 feet?
that's a typical standard that they would know. The land planner
They
would
would
know,
know.
the engineer, so we don't.
And then, okay, I accept
I mean,
that.
we could have a compact space that might be a little shorter, but.
Okay, well, if there's a general
Yeah,
standard,
yeah.
it just, that was kind of.
It's the width that kind of could change.
And then it says, which says tree quantities and sizes. My question was, do we designate how many need to be, how?
Yeah, we need to
designate
refer
how
back
many
to the
need be
landscape requirements.
Tree
on
islands
that.
is my actual question. We say landscape island, but do we also designate tree islands?
We do in the tree ordinance. So we probably need to kind of refer back to that on these, on the number of trees and the sizes.
But for the tree ordinance,
Okay, so at some point it has to refer back to the tree ordinance,
right?
because it's too vague right here.
For the number of trees and whatnot, like I said, we'll leave the
Yeah.
sizes designated in here as far as the islands go, but the tree quantities and the tree sizes, we can refer back to.
Great, thank you.
And this is a little different than what we require, because we require 10-foot wide,
Mhm.
and we require for every 6 space. So it's actually not as stringent.
Right, this is a little bit more industrial or a little less. Okay.
This number 9, is that, read that.
Yeah, parking
Divided
areas
parking
shall be
area.
divided into sections is probably the way it should say.
Divided,
Yeah, parking areas shall be divided into sections.
I typed that.
Capacities, not more than.
Well, it probably was mine. Terry, I know you had some things about the parking structures, and I haven't done anything just because do you have any suggestions? I know we talked about it before.
Because one feels really vague under parking structure, and I don't know what we say to make that work.
Yeah, I guess the question would be is whether, if there is a parking structure, do we want it to have solid walls or cables, for an example? You know, the barrier, the car barrier. You know, the cables are gonna look a whole lot different. So, I think we should say, you know, visible from streets, that it would have an architectural treatment, you know, kind of an opaque wall or something like that.
But just playing devil's advocate, what's safer in today's environment? Opaque wall or cable where you can actually
It's
see in?
It's either or.
You mean
It's
security?
security wise, if you can see in, the better.
Security safety.
Yeah, security safety,
The
the cables,
Parker.
you can see in better.
How about
But
safety?
then if you have cars and they're at night and they turn on their headlights, you get all those lights shining out
Yeah.
through. So it's,
Those cables are ugly.
And get uglier as they wear.
Okay, I was just asking a question. I don't have an opinion. I was just asking a
yeah,
question.
they're,
Maybe just.
the more open they are, the safer they are, because you can observe them.
Right.
Is there a Stanley Victor?
I think I can get a whole rep job.
I think there's a guy named Victor Stanley that's
Still unemployed. I'm thinking about there's a business I can start right here in Milton.
Making a few rep
Cables,
calls.
chairs, work benches,
All right.
lighting, neon lighting. Oh, wait, can't do neon lighting. Damn.
Let's move on. I have a question on 14. If anybody else is. 1106. This is probably something that I didn't do exhaustively, but in 1106 all parcels at front shall meet capital zoning district requirements. What are zoning district requirements? Are we talking about Highway 9? Are we talking about this? What are we talking about?
No, I mean zoning, I mean the zoning, C1, O and I, blah, blah,
Okay.
We should say underlying zoning district requirements.
Yeah.
What is the right terminology?
Underlying.
Underlying.
And not
This
the
is an
state Highway
overlay.
9 overlay district.
like the building setbacks.
But now,
all that.
why in this case are we doing that instead of saying, because that's inconsistent with what we just
It is.
said before about if it's not here, Highway 9 controls.
Unless it's addressed in here, so that's how I'm addressing
No, I understand.
it. Yeah.
But why are we not using Highway 9? Why are we going to the underlying zoning?
Because I think it goes back to the idea of an office building, your typical uses in the areas that they're not going to want to, I guess they could do office building in the front, but they probably aren't going to want to. They want to have more flexibility. So
Yeah, we're giving them a little bit more.
Okay.
we're not giving, whatever that
We're not
new
giving them the
setback.
minimum setback
Yeah.
or the
The
maximum
maximum setback. It's just status quo of what's already here.
Okay. And then I'll restate it. I guess we're okay with the idea of saying that in Deerfield we want to encourage mechanical units to be on the ground. But that's the way I read this. We don't want them on the roof, we want them on the ground.
I never read that. Where is that?
Well, it's
It's at
toward
the
the
top of page
last.
15.
Yeah. Roof-mounted
That's in
mechanical.
theirs.
Roof-mounted mechanical equipment bins and stacks shall be minimized and where possible eliminated. And that was in this.
What that really ought to just say they should be screened.
That's a whole different thing. Because this one doesn't even talk about parapet walls.
I think this
That's
is
part
envisioning-
of why they want to limit the
Right?
rooftop mounted equipment, because typically on an office building you don't put a large parapet.
I think it's, to your point, I think it's okay like it is for what it's then suggested. That you're not asking them to put it on the rooftop. That it
Well,
has
you're
to
encouraging
be.
them not to put it on the rooftop, you're encouraging
Right.
them to put it on the ground.
Right, and then
it has to be screened.
Oh, I misunderstood you. I thought you were saying screened on the roof.
No.
You're
no.
saying on the ground.
Yeah, on the ground, but
yeah.
it's screened.
I'm with you, I'm sorry, I misunderstood.
Yeah.
Is there an exhibit B that goes with this somewhere in there?
Yeah, we're gonna
Yeah,
get rid
we-
of it, yeah.
We got that one, just,
Where's that?
there's a reference to an exhibit that's
Exhibit B.
non-existent
So,
for us.
Terry,
Meandering
to your point,
sidewalks.
we ought to maybe change B to say they should be screened, not that they should be painted to be compatible.
B2.
And 4.
And what's the difference between a rooftop appurtenance and a roof-mounted mechanical unit?
What they were referring to there was a penthouse. You know, how you have
Yeah.
the roof, and then you've got the penthouse on a building.
Yeah,
I think that's what they were referencing there, but it needs to probably be a little tighter than that. Yeah. Because typically what you'll have is the penthouse, and you'll have your cooling tower within it, and then you'll probably have the chiller and all the other things that are a part of that.
yeah. But you probably have piping that's exposed outside of that, right? No?
Not if you're doing a good job.
Okay. I'm used to seeing too many downtown. I look down on a lot of those.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you're in the
Yeah.
tallest building. One of the tallest
Yeah,
buildings.
unfortunately, we got worse than that. We just did Cobb County's courthouse, and the bead and everything. We've got. You look down on it, and you've got duct work and all kinds of other stuff going all over the top of this 7-story building. And as long as you're looking up at it, it looks really nice.
Just don't fly over.
Just don't fly over it,
It's like the
or
top
be in a
of my
taller
head.
building. Well, mine's there too. So.
Yeah, but it's hard
I
to
guess
get.
we don't talk to
But I know.
That's
The problem
your
is,
idea.
everybody's
Grass
looking
down.
down.
That's covered in F.
Is that something that we
Not
have,
on these so much.
is that something that we have to?
I don't think the city wants to legislate that.
Well, unless we want to be the green community.
Legislate what?
Require it, but
Green
I don't
roofs.
Ask
see
about
us
the green
requiring it.
roofs.
Whatever happened to the green committee?
Where is it going?
Is that
We
gonna
gotta
get
in
started
there.
before Michelle goes out?
Yeah, we have to turn it in.
We're gonna turn it in, yeah. Well, what we're trying to do is do the easy stuff first, which is all the policy stuff, which really means that y'all don't have a lot to do with it until we get ready to do new ordinances.
I just need to digress.
And they
All right,
just need to
is
be
it-
done.
Wow.
It'll be fixed. It'll be fixed.
Let me ask one thing before we move off the last page 15. The solar collectors, skylights, et cetera, et cetera, since we've kind of had this issue come up, I thought maybe we should add, that the structural elements of such equipment should be screened from view,
Yes,
because that's basically how we ended up
Yeah.
on that last one.
Yeah.
Structural, just the structural elements should.
There's a whole other issue that's going to be out there.
I thought we
Yeah, I
said in
think
B
we
that
said
anything
Be
on the roof is
screened.
gonna have to be screened.
Yeah, yeah. One of the other issues that probably at some point in time is actually solar collectors on the ground mounted. That is going to be in.
Gonna get ground mounted?
I can see.
I can see fields of it.
I can see it happening pretty quickly.
Not to digress, they just built a new parking deck right down by Centennial Park, and the top deck has nothing but collectors on top of it.
Yeah,
Big, huge collector panel.
yeah.
I don't know what the parking garage does with the energy, but
Sells it to the grid.
Probably.
yes.
You get double points for that in LEED because you're shading the top parking as well.
Oh, it's above the cars? I was gonna
Yeah,
say.
no, it's above the cars.
Yeah,
That's what it is.
so you take the top.
Most
I
of,
thought
most
they
of
were
those,
sacrificing the top.
yeah,
part.
most of,
They
and
have
most
to
of
be
those decks
making a
are,
ton
most of the decks, the top deck is
Yeah.
open, right?
Yeah,
And the
Right,
actual
right,
ones,
right,
they
right,
put a
right.
whole.
I misunderstood.
there are
Above
some
car park.
Yeah.
there are some businesses that are out there looking at doing that
Yeah, I've seen
where they it's a
I'm surprised it's.
they'll come in and rent or buy or pay the air rights.
I'm surprised someone's willing to be able to stand the uplift on those collector panels, and they're huge.
Yeah, that's
That's what structural engineering are about.
Page 1 of the chart,
Okay.
calculations is spelled wrong.
Calc.
Calculations. Maybe not that they say taken.
Then that must be how it's spelled in the ordinance, because I didn't change it.
Probably is. Yikes.
This is new.
Calculated is.
No, it is in the ordinance.
Yeah,
It's
the
in a
only
different
things that have
section.
changed are the things that are scratched out or underlined.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's
I thought
fine.
this was part of Deerfield.
No, it's a different section. Like, well, but I didn't see it.
Other than that,
Calculations.
other than that, I didn't look at this.
Just in case you need calculated.
They are in from Florida, those people.
All right, so you got changes.
I didn't look at this, to be honest.
So you've broken out library as a separate
Yeah, because
entity.
since we're gonna probably get a new library, I thought.
They were picking up the site.
That way there will be an argument about how many parking spaces.
I think it's never
You
gonna
got an inside track on when they're gonna pick a site?
I got nothing.
Word is that they're gonna be sending out RFQs for architectural firms
How you gonna send out an
Yeah.
RFQ when you don't even know the site?
in April, and they are rapidly, they have
They
selected.
probably know.
They have selected.
Yeah, I think they've selected, but that won't tell anybody still.
So what's the
So-
topography?
If I read the paper right.
Where
the
is it?
The first one's gonna be the new Roswell.
Because
the
they already
second
have
one's
the
gonna be
land,
the new
yeah.
Alpharetta, the third one's gonna be Milton.
But aren't they gonna do it all at the same time?
They're all going to come out at the same time.
But those
Same
were the
bid.
first three, is what I'm
Right.
saying.
Yeah,
That's what the argument.
they'll all come out. It's not in that order. They'll all come out at one time.
You guys are gonna try to bid on
Aren't you gonna hold on and try
Go
to
for
get
it.
the one to redo the downtown?
No. I can tell you who's going to get that. Freelon.
Did you do the last one?
No, Freelon is doing did the Black Arts facility, did Martin Luther King,
Who did the current library?
Marcel Breuer. He's dead by about 25 years, so,
it? You mean the downtown library?
yeah,
No.
yeah, Marcel.
I hope the new one, they at least make an accommodation for the homeless people to be in the back instead of.
That's because you're right across the street from it,
You have to
right?
look at it all the time.
Yeah, I have a real interest in both Milton's and Alpharetta.
Yeah. Demonstrations.
Basically.
Yeah, demonstrations. are
So
gonna
does
be
anybody
wild.
have any are you guys okay with reducing the retail and,
I didn't read it all, to be honest.
that's okay.
Yeah, they haven't-
Basically reducing the retail
It's consistent
by
with what we talked about the other night, but
Yeah.
1 for 1,000. I did a carry-out only restaurant because we've had some situations where it's just basically carry-out, and why should they have to do 10 for 1,000? I looked at the calculations for shared parking. There really isn't anything that's different or new that can help it. It's just difficult.
Yeah, it's
there's
a
nothing where
challenging
you
mess.
increased, it was all decreases, is the way I read it.
Yeah.
Correct. I did think about, there was another jurisdiction that had taverns to have, it was a huge number, 20 per 1,000.
What I don't.
And I mean, that would kind of,
But we don't have taverns because all
Well,
of
our
ours sell.
bars
Yeah,
or
yeah, but
whatever.
all of ours sell enough food.
Yeah, they
that
have,
consider
Yeah.
the
in
rest.
order to carry the
Carry
liquor
the liquor
license,
license,
they've got to do a certain volume.
yeah.
What I didn't understand.
How does Old Blind Dog average St. Patty's Day consumption with the rest of their food?
Well, I guess
They
it's
must
just
do
one
it
day.
annually. Spread it all out.
What I didn't understand, maybe it's just the wording, but is in section 1411, this is the shared parking thing on C at the bottom. It says maximum number of parking spaces, and then it says properties proposed for individual uses would require the following number of parking places. Is that,
That's the scenario of, it goes, for instance, then you read on.
no,
That's,
I understand, but is that saying that 680 is the maximum?
no, that's saying if you had those 3 different uses and you just calculated them all together, it'd be 680 versus if you do properties proposed for multiple uses under this provision of shared parking would end up with 508 instead.
I understand the calculation, that's not my question.
Oh,
The
okay,
heading
sorry.
of this is maximum number of parking spaces.
Maybe we should put on there calculation of maximum number of parking spaces.
Yeah.
Example.
But it isn't a calculation of the maximum, is it? That's what I'm saying. It's calculation of the minimum, isn't it? Or the required.
Required.
For the,
Minimum.
Well, but it's written, these are written as not minimums, they're written as maximums as well too. In other words, if you're only required to provide 4 per thousand, well, that's not the minimum, that's also the maximum.
So
Well-
it's but isn't it the required number?
The minimum required, so you could go above.
Right. I mean, this gets back to the idea of that I asked about before about the pervious parking when you get over the required number. Is if we say maximum, that implies that you can't put in more than that. If you say minimum required, then if they put in more than that, then it gets back to the pervious runs in place.
Right now, we're saying minimum.
Yeah, but the heading says maximum,
why don't we just say calculation of the number of parking spaces?
Where are you seeing
Where do you see?
right there.
Right there.
I understand.
The heading
It's
like in this one,
section says
just be
maximum.
like on this one,
an
it
example.
says,
Yeah, here, this was here, which was.
Right.
Yeah, that's what I was reading.
But this section is on shared parking. These are all standalone uses in the front, right? 1410 is all standalone uses, correct? Isn't 1410 intended to be standalone
Right,
uses?
yes.
So when you get to 1411, we're talking about shared parking.
Right. So when
And
you show.
1411C says maximum number of parking places.
I still, when I look at the ordinance, I still think it's referring to the maximum number if you just went straight calculations below.
Yeah.
You see what I
Yeah, it should
mean?
be.
So let me rephrase what you said, see if I understand. So what you're saying is chart 1 is the number of parking spaces that would be required if you calculated on a standalone basis.
Correct.
Chart number 2 is the number of spaces that would be required under the shared parking approach.
Right.
The result is that 508 would be required instead of 680.
Correct.
Okay. I just think the heading needs to be taken out.
Yeah.
The maximum
Yeah,
number of
we'll
spaces
reword
just
that.
doesn't, it's confusing.
So it should say the calculated number of parking, well,
The calculated number of
Example
parking places on a
calculation
standalone
number of
basis.
parking- Of shared parking spaces.
But it's not shared, that's the number of
Yeah,
parking
see, it's
spaces on a
saying-
standalone basis.
Right, number 1 and number
Right.
2. How about we just make C example of calculation of number of parking
you could
spaces?
just say parking calculations.
Right,
Or parking
parking
calculation.
calculation.
Parking calculators.
Shared parking.
And then I didn't understand 1412 at all, I didn't spend a whole lot of time reading it, but I didn't understand what the straight line distance from a MARTA station had to do with anything.
well, that's from the old one, and I mean, part of me could get rid of it, but it's like, who knows
I
what
mean,
it's
if you're,
in. Well, we'll never
if the
have a
straight line
mark.
distance
I mean, we
is
could get
4
rid of it.
miles from the MARTA station.
Well, good news is it gives you a chance to reduce the parking.
Yeah, it's trying to allow
Yeah.
for a parking reduction.
Right, so I
If you live
just,
close to a bus stop.
If we ever have a MARTA station that's anywhere.
Or a bus stop, she added bus
I
stops.
see I added bus stops below in the red.
And we do have some bus stops, just not a ton of them.
Okay,
But you identified
let's
it
go
as
back,
MARTA.
let's go back to the first
It's a
one.
MARTA bus stop, it's run by MARTA, the buses
Well, what
are.
if, does it have to be MARTA?
No, we can just say bus stop.
Yeah, we can see bus stop.
If we have our own community transport.
It's true, okay.
Back to the
point.
first one though, do we, as we sit here today, there is no MARTA station that anywhere in Milton would qualify for that.
Right.
Even
You want
under
to just take out all
redevelopment,
the
because there's no
We can
MARTA
do
station.
that.
station?
Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
there's no MARTA.
That's fine.
Makes sense to me.
Take out.
I guess the closest it ever could be is that
We're just getting
400
rid of any
word,
reference to
but-
the MARTA stations, because we don't expect that we're gonna have any.
Like I said, she increased it to 4 miles or something. Then it's gotta be line of sight or, that's all.
One man I had,
Per my calculations, I think we're done.
Fred's got one more, he's got
Oh.
something.
no, first, right, it's not.
Page 1.
Being funny, under funeral homes, you only have one parking parking space per 3 fixed seats, but nothing for the guy who ever died. on the tour.
He's not gonna drive there.
Can't have it. He gets no credit.
No parking, no rolling cart parking.
Versus
The way I
having a
read
road.
it. Totally wrong.
Permanent seats at a funeral.
Right.